You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. My name is Ethan Mercer, and I'm 34 years old. I've been living in Portland for the last 5 years, but my restless spirit has always kept me moving. 6 months ago, I converted an old Ford Transit into my dream home on wheels, solar panels, compact kitchen, memory foam mattress, the works. My freelance graphic design job meant I could work from anywhere with decent Wi-Fi, and I'd been taking full advantage of that freedom. The crisp October air followed me as I crossed the Columbia River into Washington State. I'd been planning this solo trip through the Pacific Northwest for months, a chance to decompress after a particularly stressful design project for a demanding client. My route would take me through the Olympic Peninsula, up to the San Juan Islands, and eventually into the North Cascades before heading back south. The first few days had been picture perfect, the kind of experience that makes you wonder why everyone doesn't live this way. I'd wake up to misty mornings, work for a few hours with a breathtaking view outside my window, then hike or explore until sunset. No neighbors complaining about noise, no landlord raising the rent, just me and the open road. By the fourth day, I'd reached a small town called Fern Harbor on the Olympic Peninsula. It was one of those quaint coastal communities that seemed frozen in time. A main street lined with weathered storefronts, fishing boats bobbing in the harbor, and dense forests pressing in from all sides. I parked near a coffee shop, connected to their Wi-Fi, and spent the afternoon finishing a logo design. The barista, a friendly woman named Maggie with gray-streaked hair and a weathered face, refilled my mug twice. "You passing through or staying a while?" she asked, eyeing my laptop and the van visible through the window. "Just passing through," I replied, saving my work. "Any recommendations for where I can park overnight?" Her smile faltered slightly. "There's a campground about 15 miles north, nice and safe. I wouldn't recommend boondocking around here, especially this time of year." "Any particular reason?" I asked, suddenly curious. Maggie glanced over her shoulder before leaning in. "Just local superstition, probably. But we've had a few incidents with travelers who parked in isolated spots. Probably nothing, but the campground's got hot showers." She forced a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. I thanked her for the tip, but mentally dismissed it. I'd heard similar warnings in dozens of small towns, usually from locals who either wanted to sell campground spots or were suspicious of van dwellers. Besides, my budget was tight this month, and I'd spotted a perfect overnight spot on a Forest Service road just outside of town. As dusk settled over Fern Harbor, I drove my van up the winding dirt road, away from the twinkling lights of town. The forest grew thicker around me, massive evergreens blocking what remained of the daylight. I found a small clearing about 3 miles in, just big enough for my van with a view of the distant ocean through a break in the trees. I fixed myself a simple dinner of pasta and settled in with a book, occasionally glancing at my phone. No service, as expected this far out. The isolation felt comforting rather than concerning. Just me, my thoughts, and the gentle sounds of the forest settling in for the night. I had no idea that this peaceful evening would be my last moment of true calm for a very long time. I woke to the sound of rain drumming against my roof, a soothing white noise that made me burrow deeper under my blankets. According to my watch, it was just past 6 a.m., and the forest outside remained cloaked in pre-dawn darkness. I dozed for another hour before finally dragging myself out of bed to make coffee on my portable stove. While the water heated, I noticed something odd, muddy footprints leading away from my van. At first, I assumed they were mine from the previous evening, but these tracks were larger, with a distinctive pattern I didn't recognize. They circled the entire vehicle before disappearing into the undergrowth. A hiker, perhaps, but why circle my van in the middle of nowhere in the rain? I shrugged it off and focused on my work. The rain continued throughout the morning, alternating between gentle drizzle and heavy downpour. Around noon, I decided to drive back into town for lunch and to recharge my electronics. When I turned the key, though, the engine sputtered weakly before falling silent. I tried again with the same result. "Perfect timing," I muttered, popping the hood. I had basic mechanical knowledge, enough to handle minor issues, but immediately spotted the problem. Several wires had been cut clean through, not frayed or damaged by an animal. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my van. A chill ran down my spine as I surveyed the silent forest around me. The rain muffled all sounds, creating an eerie, isolated bubble. I tried my phone again, still no service. I was 3 miles from the main road, at least 5 from town, with no way to call for help and a disabled vehicle. My options were limited: stay with the van and hope someone came by, or hike to the main road and try to flag down help. I decided to wait until morning. Hiking unfamiliar forest roads in the rain seemed like an unnecessary risk when I had shelter, food, and water. Besides, maybe whoever had damaged my van would return, and I wanted to be prepared. I dug out the small baseball bat I kept under my bed. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. As twilight approached, the rain finally stopped, and an unnatural silence fell over the forest. No birds called, no insects chirped. Even the constant dripping from the trees seemed to pause. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I peered through my windows at the darkening woods. That's when I noticed them: indentations in the soft earth around my van. Not footprints exactly, but circular depressions appearing in sequence, as if something heavy was approaching one step at a time. I watched, frozen in place, as one depression formed, then another, moving steadily toward my driver's side door. A sharp, metallic smell filled my van, like copper and rock combined. My breath fogged in front of my face as the temperature plummeted. I clutched the bat with white-knuckled hands, my entire body trembling. Whatever was out there, it wasn't human, and it knew I was watching. The final depression formed inches from my door. Then, slowly, deliberately, something scratched 3 distinct lines down the metal exterior, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. I bit my lip to keep from screaming as a whispered voice, barely audible, said my name. Ethan. The voice came again, more insistent this time, somehow both distant and directly in my ear. I scrambled away from the door, heart hammering against my ribs. How did it know my name? I hadn't told anyone in town except the barista. A heavy thud hit the roof of my van, causing the entire vehicle to shudder. Then another, and another, like something was crawling across the top, testing for weaknesses. I clutched my bat tighter, eyes fixed on the ceiling, tracking the movement. The battery-powered lantern flickered, casting wild shadows across the interior. Through my skylight, I caught a glimpse of something that turned my blood to ice. A hand, or what resembled a hand, with elongated fingers ending in curved, yellow nails, pressing against the glass. The skin was pale gray, mottled with dark patches like advancing decay. I lunged forward, yanking the skylight cover closed. Immediately, an inhuman shriek pierced the night, a sound of rage and hunger that no human throat could produce. The pounding intensified, moving from the roof to the windows, to the doors. My van rocked with each impact. This isn't happening, I whispered to myself, pressing my back against the kitchen cabinet. This can't be real. But the rational part of my brain had shut down, overwhelmed by primal fear. Whatever was out there wanted me, and the thin metal walls of my van suddenly seemed woefully inadequate. In a moment of terrifying clarity, I remembered Maggie's warning about incidents with travelers. Had this happened before? Were the locals aware of something predatory in these woods? The thought that they might knowingly allow people to wander into danger made my stomach churn. The pounding stopped abruptly, leaving a silence more frightening than the noise. I held my breath, straining to hear any movement outside. Then a scratching sound came from underneath the van, slow, deliberate. Something was trying to access the undercarriage. I had a sudden, horrible vision of those elongated fingers tearing through my floor, grabbing my ankles, dragging me down into whatever hell that thing had emerged from. I scrambled onto my bed, as far from the floor as possible in the confined space. The scratching continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. I remained frozen, listening to the return of normal forest sounds, the dripping of rain from leaves, the distant call of an owl. Had it given up? Or was it waiting, playing a game of patience? As dawn approached, a dense fog settled over the forest, reducing visibility to mere feet outside my windows. I hadn't slept, too terrified to close my eyes. My phone still showed no service, and my van remained disabled. In the gray morning light, I examined the exterior damage: deep gouges in the metal siding, The skylight cracked in one corner, and most disturbing of all, symbols carved into the paint that resembled no language I'd ever seen. I couldn't stay with my van another night. Whatever had attacked me would return after dark. I felt this certainty in my bones. My only hope was to reach town before nightfall. I packed a backpack with essentials: water, protein bars, my small first aid kit, a flashlight, and my bat. I hesitated before adding my treasured hunting knife, a gift from my father. I'd never used it as a weapon, but its weight was reassuring. The forest felt different in daylight, still unnervingly quiet, but less openly hostile. The fog lingered, transforming familiar trees into looming specters. I oriented myself using my compass and began hiking down the forest road, constantly looking over my shoulder. About a mile from my van, I discovered the first body. At first, I thought it was a discarded sleeping bag, half hidden under brush. But as I approached, the unmistakable outline of a human form emerged. A man, probably in his 40s, lay face down in the mud. I forced myself to check for a pulse, though the unnatural angle of his neck told me he was long dead. His backpack lay nearby, contents scattered. I rummaged through them with trembling hands, finding a working flashlight and a map. Most disturbing was a journal with frantic entries describing something following him. The final entry, dated 3 days ago, read only, "It knows my name." I should have turned back toward the main road, but the map showed something I hadn't known, an alternate trail leading directly to town, cutting the distance nearly in half. With the fog thickening and my paranoia growing with every shadow, I made the fatal decision to take the shortcut. The trail quickly deteriorated, becoming overgrown and difficult to follow. Strange formations of rocks appeared at regular intervals, stacked in ways that defied natural explanation. The fog pressed closer, limiting my vision to just a few feet ahead. And then I heard it, the same shuffling gait, following parallel to my path, just out of sight in the mist. I broke into a run, abandoning any pretense of caution. Branches whipped at my face, roots threatened to trip me, but blind panic drove me forward. The sounds behind me accelerated too, no longer hiding their pursuit. Heavy breathing, not my own, echoed through the trees. It was gaining on me. The trail opened suddenly into a clearing dominated by an enormous, lightning-struck tree. Its blackened trunk split down the middle, creating a dark cavity large enough for a person to fit inside. Without thinking, I dove into this natural hiding place, pressing myself against the damp, rotting wood. Outside, the shuffling circled the tree. I could hear sniffing, like an animal tracking scent. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain it would give me away. Then a voice, not the inhuman whisper from before, but a woman's voice, familiar. "Ethan, are you out here? It's Maggie from the coffee shop. Someone reported your van abandoned. Are you hurt?" Relief flooded through me, nearly bringing tears to my eyes. I started to call out, to emerge from my hiding place, but something stopped me. How had she found me so quickly? How did she know exactly where to look? And why was she alone? I remained silent, watching through a crack in the wood as a figure emerged from the fog. It looked like Maggie, with her gray-streaked hair and barista's apron. But she moved wrong, her gait too fluid, her head rotating too far as she scanned the clearing. "I know you're here, Ethan," she said, her voice changing mid-sentence, dropping an octave and developing that unnatural echo. "We always find travelers like you, the lonely ones, the ones no one will miss." My hiding place inside the tree suddenly felt like a trap. I was cornered, with the creature, wearing Maggie's appearance like an ill-fitting suit, between me and any escape route. I clutched my knife, knowing it would provide little protection against something that could mimic human form. The others didn't run this far. The thing that wasn't Maggie continued, circling the tree. They stayed with their vehicles, thinking metal and glass would save them. "You're smarter. That makes this more entertaining." My mind raced through scenarios, each more desperate than the last. I could try to outrun it, but it clearly knew these woods better than I did. I could fight, but what damage could a knife do to something supernatural? As if reading my thoughts, it laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "We've been feeding on travelers in these woods for centuries," it said. "Long before your metal homes on wheels, before the roads, before the town. The locals know. They've always known. They leave us alone, and we take only the outsiders. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The entire town was complicit, directing unsuspecting travelers like me to isolated spots, knowing what waited in the forest. How many had disappeared over the years? Dozens? Hundreds? And no one had stopped it. In that moment of horrified realization, I made my decision. If I was going to die, I wouldn't do it cowering in a tree. I gripped my knife, took a deep breath, and burst from my hiding place, charging directly at the false Maggie. The creature's expression shifted from confidence to surprise as I slashed wildly with my knife. I caught it across what should have been a cheek, but instead of blood, black ichor poured from the wound. Its disguise flickered, Maggie's features distorting to reveal glimpses of the true horror beneath. Pallid skin, hollow eye sockets, a mouth too wide and filled with needle-like teeth. It shrieked in pain or rage, lunging at me with inhuman speed. I dodged, barely, and sprinted toward what I hoped was the direction of town. The fog had thinned slightly, allowing me fleeting glimpses of the path ahead. Behind me, crashing sounds indicated my pursuer had abandoned stealth for speed. I don't know how long I ran. Time lost meaning in my panic. My lungs burned, my legs threatened to buckle, but stopping meant death. The forest began to thin, and I caught glimpses of buildings ahead. Hope surged through me as I pushed my battered body for one final sprint. I burst from the tree line onto the outskirts of Fern Harbor, gasping for breath. A couple walking their dog stared at me in alarm, my clothes torn and muddy, face scratched, eyes wild with terror. "Help," I managed to gasp. "Something's chasing me." The man frowned, pulling his companion closer. "There's nothing there," he said, gesturing to the peaceful forest edge behind me. I turned, expecting to see the creature in pursuit, but the trail was empty. The woods stood silent and innocent in the afternoon sun. Had I imagined it all? A breakdown brought on by isolation? The woman was on her phone, her voice low but urgent. "Yes, another one, from the forest road." "No, he's injured but alive." "Yes, we'll keep him here." Understanding dawned too late. They weren't calling for help. They were alerting others that their trap had caught, but not killed. The entire town was part of it, a centuries-old arrangement. Sacrifice the outsiders, protect their own. I ran again, this time toward the main road, hoping to flag down a passing car, someone not from Fern Harbor. But my strength was failing. My injuries, more severe than adrenaline, had let me feel. I made it to the highway just as dusk was falling, waving desperately at the few cars that passed. None stopped. Some swerved around me. Others simply drove by, eyes forward, pretending not to see the bloodied man begging for help. In the growing darkness, I saw car after car turn into Fern Harbor, likely tourists or travelers looking for dinner or a place to spend the night. More potential victims, unaware of what waited for them. Night fell completely as I stumbled along the highway, each step more difficult than the last. Behind me, at the edge of hearing, came that now familiar shuffling gait. It was patient. It knew I couldn't run anymore. It knew no help would come. As the stars appeared overhead, I accepted the truth. I wouldn't escape these woods. Not alive. I thought of my van, still sitting in that clearing, evidence of my existence. Would anyone ever find it? Would anyone connect it to my disappearance? Or would Fern Harbor claim another victim, unremarked and unmourned? The shuffling grew closer. I turned to face it, determined to meet my end with what dignity I could muster. The darkness between the trees shifted, coalesced, took form. And in my final moments, I understood why the locals feared the forest but feared interfering even more. What emerged was ancient, patient, and absolutely inevitable. My name is Sophia Reynolds, and I'm 28 years old. Originally from Tacoma, I've spent the last 3 years living in Seattle working as a wildlife photographer for various nature publications. 6 months ago, I made the leap many dream of but few commit to. I sold most of my possessions, purchased a 2015 Mercedes Sprinter, and converted it into my mobile home and photography studio. The cramped apartment that had been draining my bank account was replaced by a constantly changing view through my windshield, and I'd never felt more alive. The October rain pounded against my van's roof as I navigated the winding roads of Washington's Olympic Peninsula. I'd been commissioned to photograph the seasonal salmon run for an environmental magazine, which brought me to the remote riverside areas where few tourists ventured, especially this late in the season. My weather-sealed camera equipment was packed safely in custom-built drawers beneath my bed, ready for the early morning shoot I had planned. I'd spent the previous night in a designated campground near Port Angeles, but tonight I needed to be closer to the river where the salmon would be running at dawn. My research had led me to a little-known spot just outside the small logging town of Riverdale, where a Forest Service road ran parallel to one of the peninsula's less trafficked rivers. The coordinates had been shared on a photographer's forum by someone who claimed the location offered unparalleled wildlife access. The deeper I drove into the forest, the more my cell service dwindled until the familiar "no service" indicator appeared in the corner of my screen. I'd expected this and had downloaded offline maps of the area. The isolation didn't bother me. I'd spent countless nights alone in my van in remote locations across 3 states. In fact, I preferred the solitude and connection with nature to the noise and constraints of designated campgrounds. As dusk settled over the forest, I finally found the turnoff mentioned in the forum post. The narrow dirt road was barely visible, marked only by a faded Forest Service sign partially obscured by overgrown vegetation. My Sprinter handled the rough terrain admirably as I followed the path deeper into the woods, the sound of rushing water growing louder with each mile. After about 20 minutes of careful navigation, the trees opened to reveal a small clearing beside the river, exactly as described online. I positioned my van facing the water, giving me the perfect view for morning coffee and an easy start for my pre-dawn photography session. The river rushed by about 30 feet from my parking spot, swollen with recent rains and the bodies of returning salmon fighting their way upstream. The setting sun cast long shadows through the trees, and the air smelled of pine, moss, and the distinctive scent of river water. After a simple dinner of pasta cooked on my propane stove, I organized my camera equipment for the morning and settled into bed with a book. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a symphony of dripping water from the surrounding trees and the constant white noise of the river. Perfect sleeping conditions in my opinion. I drifted off feeling content and excited for the sunrise shoot, completely unaware that choosing this particular spot would become the worst decision of my life. Through my skylight, the stars were unusually bright, unobscured by city light pollution. I remember thinking how beautiful they were as I closed my eyes, not realizing that this peaceful moment would be the last normal one-eyed experience for a very long time. The forest around me held secrets much darker than the night sky, and by morning, I would begin to understand just how vulnerable I was in my little metal home on wheels. My alarm jolted me awake at 4:30 a.m., well before sunrise. As I fumbled to silence it, I noticed an unusual stillness outside. The constant backdrop of rushing water that had lulled me to sleep was missing. Curious and slightly concerned, I pulled on a sweatshirt and boots to investigate. The moment I stepped outside, a wave of wrongness washed over me. The river that had been raging just hours before was now reduced to a trickle, its bed exposed and glistening in the moonlight. Dozens of salmon lay gasping on the newly revealed riverbed, their bodies flapping desperately in search of water. This dramatic change in water level wasn't natural. No drought or dam release could explain such a rapid transformation overnight, especially after all the recent rainfall. I grabbed my headlamp and followed the diminished river upstream, thinking perhaps a landslide or fallen tree had created a natural dam. After about 10 minutes of hiking, I found something far more disturbing, a massive trench dug across the riverbed, diverting the water into the forest. This wasn't the work of nature. The edges were too clean, too deliberate. Someone had intentionally drained the river, and recently. The beam of my headlamp caught something reflecting back at me from the bottom of the trench. I carefully climbed down to investigate, and immediately wished I hadn't. Half buried in the mud was a metal tag, the kind used by wildlife researchers to track animals. But this wasn't attached to an animal. It was covered in dried blood and still had a small piece of what looked horribly like human tissue attached. Heart pounding, I scrambled back up the embankment. That's when I noticed the footprints, dozens of them, circling the area where I'd been standing. They looked human but were oddly shaped, with elongated toes and unusual depth, as if whoever, or whatever, had made them carried significant weight. Most disturbing of all, Several sets led in the direction of my van. I ran back toward my temporary home, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was. The soft ground revealed what my panic had initially hidden from me. Another set of footprints, these normal human ones in hiking boots, also heading toward my van. Someone else was out here, perhaps the person who had diverted the river. When my van came into view, everything looked untouched. I did a quick perimeter check, finding no signs of attempted entry. Still, something felt off. I climbed inside, locked the doors, and tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Perhaps the river diversion was part of a logging operation or some Forest Service project. Maybe the tag was for large game, not human. Perhaps the footprints were just from hikers or fishermen checking on the river. None of these explanations felt right, but they were better than the alternatives my imagination was conjuring. I decided to pack up and leave at first light. The salmon photographs would have to wait for another day, another location. I had nearly convinced myself I was overreacting when I heard it. A soft scraping sound from the roof of my van. I froze, listening intently. It came again, more deliberate this time. Moving from the rear of the vehicle toward the front, something with weight was crawling across my roof. My hand instinctively reached for my phone before remembering I had no service. The scraping stopped directly above where I sat, followed by a gentle tapping, as if someone, or something, was testing the strength of the metal. Through my roof vent, briefly illuminated by moonlight breaking through the clouds, I caught a glimpse of what looked like a hand, but it was all wrong. The fingers were too long, jointed in places human fingers weren't, and ended in points rather than nails. It pressed against the plastic cover, flexing as if testing for weakness. A primal fear gripped me as that inhuman hand continued to probe at my roof vent. I backed away as quietly as possible, grabbing the only weapon within reach, a heavy tripod. The plastic vent cover creaked under increasing pressure, small fractures spreading from the points where those elongated fingers pressed. It was only a matter of time before it gave way completely. The soft click of my doors automatically locking echoed in the silence, a sound I normally found reassuring but now seemed dangerously loud. The movement on my roof immediately stopped. Had it heard? For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, in a blur of motion, something large moved from my roof to the ground outside with a heavy thud that shook my entire van. I caught only glimpses through my curtained windows, a hunched figure circling my vehicle with unnatural speed. It moved in a jerking, disjointed manner that made my stomach turn, as if its limbs operated independently of each other. The moonlight revealed pale skin stretched too tight over an emaciated frame, and that face, barely human, with features that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves each time I caught a glimpse. A sharp rap on my driver's side window made me jump. This wasn't the creature. It was a man, middle-aged with a weathered face partially illuminated by a flashlight held under his chin. He wore a Forest Service uniform. "Open up," he called, his voice urgent but controlled. "You're in danger out here." I hesitated, trapped between two threats, the inhuman thing circling my van and this stranger who had appeared from nowhere in the middle of the night. Before I could decide, the choice was made for me. The creature let out a sound that froze my blood, halfway between a scream and a gurgle, and lunged at the forest ranger. The man turned, firing what looked like a flare gun. A bright red light momentarily transformed the night into day, and the creature recoiled, shrieking. The ranger pounded on my window again. Now, while it's distracted, survival instinct overrode caution. I unlocked the door and the ranger dove inside, slamming it behind him. Up close, I could see his uniform was torn and muddied, his face scratched and streaked with what looked like dried blood. "Drive," he commanded, his eyes wild as he scanned the darkness outside. "Get us back to the main road." Now, I scrambled into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine sputtered but didn't catch. I tried again with the same result. The ranger swore under his breath. "They've sabotaged your engine. They always do." "They?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. What was that thing? The ranger, Anderson, according to his name badge, was rummaging through his pack. He pulled out a battered radio and attempted to call for backup, but only static answered. "We call them Watchers," he finally said, still peering through the windows. "They've been in these forests for generations. Native legends talked about them, but most people thought they were just stories to keep children from wandering off alone. Outside, Shadows moved between the trees. More than one, I realized with growing horror. We were surrounded. Anderson noticed my expression and nodded grimly. They hunt in packs during the spawning season. That's why they diverted the river, to trap the salmon, their primary food source. But they've developed a taste for alternatives. A heavy impact rocked the van, followed by another. Metal groaned as something powerful pressed against the rear doors. Anderson reached into his boot and pulled out a wicked-looking knife with unusual engravings on the blade. "They can break through eventually," he said, his voice steady despite our situation. "But they're cautious, been hunted themselves over the years. They'll take their time, look for weaknesses." As if on cue, a long, spindly arm punched through my side window, showering us with safety glass. I screamed as those grotesque fingers grasped blindly in my direction. Anderson reacted instantly, slashing at the limb with his knife. A high-pitched wail erupted from outside as the creature withdrew its injured appendage. "Good news," Anderson said, wiping black ichor from his blade. "They bleed." "Bad news. They just got angry, and there's at least 5 of them out there." The creatures began a coordinated assault, pounding on every surface of the van simultaneously. The metal walls dented inward with each impact. A crack appeared in my windshield, then another. The roof vent finally gave way, and those horrifying fingers reached inside, grasping at air just feet above us. "We need to run for it," Anderson said, his eyes fixed on the failing roof vent. "They won't follow us across the river. They're territorial, and another pack claims that side." "But the river's nearly dry," I reminded him, ducking as another window shattered, sending glass flying. "Exactly," he replied. "That's not normal behavior. Something's forced them to change their hunting patterns. They're desperate, which makes them more dangerous but also more predictable." Anderson pulled a flare from his pack and handed me his knife. "When I set this off, we go out the side door. Run straight for the river crossing. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'll be right behind you." I clutched the knife, its unfamiliar weight both terrifying and reassuring. Anderson held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. He ignited the flare, filling the van with harsh red light, and threw it out the broken window. Outside, the creatures shrieked and scattered from the sudden brightness. "Now," he shouted, yanking open the side door. I leaped out and sprinted toward the tree line, exactly as instructed. Behind me, I heard the creatures' screams turn from pain to rage as they realized their prey was escaping. The wet ground slipped beneath my feet as I ran blindly through the darkness, guided only by the sound of the trickle of water ahead. A primal instinct told me I was being pursued. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear something moving through the underbrush, fast, gaining on me with each stride. My lungs burned, my legs threatened to buckle, but pure adrenaline kept me moving forward. The riverbed appeared before me, a dark gash in the forest floor. I jumped down without hesitation, stumbling across exposed rocks and the bodies of dying salmon. The shallow water soaked my boots as I splashed through what remained of the current. I was halfway across when I finally looked back. Anderson was not behind me. Instead, 3 of the creatures hunched at the edge of the riverbed, their bodies contorted in unnatural angles as they watched me with gleaming eyes. They paced back and forth, agitated but unwilling to cross the boundary. Beyond them, the night was silent. No sign of the ranger who had saved me. I couldn't stop. Whatever territorial line these creatures respected wouldn't protect me forever. I scrambled up the opposite bank and continued running, the knife still clutched in my white-knuckled grip. The forest was thicker on this side, the undergrowth more challenging to navigate in the dark. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, I collapsed against a massive cedar, my body finally betraying me. I strained to hear any sounds of pursuit, but the forest had returned to its normal nocturnal symphony. Insects chirping, an owl calling in the distance. Had I escaped? As my breathing slowed, rational thought returned. I needed help, but I was miles from any road, with no phone service and no idea which direction to head. My van contained everything I owned, my identification, my equipment, my livelihood. But returning was unthinkable. A snapping twig jolted me back to full alertness. Something was moving through the forest nearby, something large. I raised the knife, preparing for another encounter with the creatures. Instead, a beam of light cut through the darkness, followed by hushed voices. Human voices, "Hello," I called out, instantly regretting breaking my silence. The lights swung in my direction. 3 figures emerged from the trees, wearing what looked like hunting gear. Relief flooded through me until I noticed their expressions, not surprise or concern, but grim satisfaction, as if they'd been expecting to find me. "Got another one," the oldest of the 3 said into a radio. "Ranger Anderson's last stray." Ice filled my veins. How did they know about Anderson? The man approached, holding out his hand in what should have been a comforting gesture, but something in his eyes made me keep my distance. "It's all right now," he said, his voice gentle but his gaze calculating. "You're safe from the watchers on this side of the river. We've been protecting these forests for generations." The woman beside him nodded. "Anderson shouldn't have interfered. This section of the river is part of the agreement. Their territory for feeding, our territory for living. When too many outsiders like you camp in their hunting grounds, they get hungry, desperate. They start coming into town, taking local children." Horrific understanding dawned on me. "You let them hunt campers? You sacrifice people to them?" The third person, a younger man with cold eyes, shrugged. "Better a few strangers than our own. Besides, they would have existed here regardless. At least this way, we control where and when. Anderson tries to save people when he can," the older man continued. "Thinks he's doing the right thing, but he doesn't understand the balance we've maintained. Now come with us. Dawn's coming, and you need shelter." I backed away, knife raised. "And then what? You'll let me go? Call the authorities?" Their silence was answer enough. Whatever shelter they offered would be a cage, holding me until they needed another sacrifice to maintain their twisted pact with the creatures. The 3 locals exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. I used their momentary hesitation to my advantage, turning and sprinting deeper into the forest. Their shouts followed me, along with the crashing sounds of pursuit. They knew these woods intimately. I had perhaps seconds of head start before they would overtake me. A steep embankment appeared suddenly in my path. Without time to stop, I half ran, half slid down the muddy slope, vegetation tearing at my clothes. At the bottom, I discovered what felt like a miracle, a gravel road, clearly maintained and heading in what I hoped was the direction of the highway. I ran along the road, every muscle screaming in protest. Behind me, voices called out as my pursuers reached the embankment. The gravel crunched beneath my feet, each step painfully loud in the pre-dawn stillness. If I could reach a main road before they caught me, flag down a passing car, perhaps I still had a chance. The road curved sharply, and something large loomed ahead, a building. As I drew closer, I recognized it as an old lumber mill, its windows dark, equipment silent. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, but the gate stood partially open. Without hesitation, I slipped inside, hoping to find a phone, another person, any means of escape. The massive main building offered numerous hiding places among the machinery. I ducked behind what looked like an industrial saw, trying to control my breathing as I heard my pursuers reach the gate. They conferred briefly before splitting up to search the property. "She can't have gone far," one called out. "Check the offices for a phone." In the dim light filtering through dirty windows, I saw something that made my heart leap, a truck parked by the loading dock. If I could reach it, if the keys were inside, I might still escape. I waited until the searchers moved toward the opposite end of the building before making my move. I crept toward the truck, staying low, using the machinery for cover. When I reached it, I nearly sobbed with relief. The keys were in the ignition, a forgotten oversight by some worker. I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, praying the engine would start. The truck roared to life, headlights cutting through the gloom. Shouts of alarm echoed through the mill as my pursuers realized what was happening. I slammed the vehicle into gear and accelerated toward the gate, crashing through it with a metallic scream that matched my own desperate cry. The road stretched before me, and I pushed the ancient truck to its limits, fishtailing on the gravel. In my rearview mirror, I saw the locals emerge from the mill, watching me escape, but making no move to follow. Their expressions weren't angry but resigned, almost pitying. As the sun began to rise, I reached an intersection with a paved road and turned toward what signage indicated was the direction of Aberdeen, the nearest city of any size. My hands shook on the steering wheel, tears streaking my face as the adrenaline began to fade, leaving room for the full horror of what I'd experienced to sink in. About 5 miles later, I spotted a gas station with its lights on. I pulled in, practically falling out of the truck in my rush to reach a phone. The attendant looked alarmed at my appearance, clothing torn, face scratched, wild-eyed with fear and exhaustion. "Please," I gasped. "I need to call the police. There are people in the forest, creatures, they're hunting campers." A forest ranger tried to help me, but... "Whoa, slow down," the attendant said, reaching for the phone. "You talking about Riverdale? Those woods by the old spawning grounds?" I nodded frantically. "Yes, there are people in town who know about it. They're helping these things hunt." The attendant's expression changed, subtly but unmistakably. His hand moved away from the phone. "Maybe you should sit down. You've had a shock. Let me get you some coffee while you calm down." Cold realization washed over me. His reaction wasn't disbelief, it was recognition. The conspiracy extended beyond that small cluster of homes, beyond the twisted locals who had chased me. How far did it reach? How many communities were complicit in feeding travelers to those creatures? I backed toward the door, suddenly aware that I'd made a potentially fatal mistake. "Actually, I think I'll keep driving. Is Aberdeen the closest city?" "About 30 miles south," he replied, his friendly tone now clearly forced. "But you look exhausted. We have a motel next door. Why don't I call ahead, get you a room? On the house." "No thanks," I said, continuing my retreat. Outside, I noticed a police cruiser pulling into the lot. No lights or siren, just a routine stop. Or was it? Had the attendant signaled somehow? I ran back to the truck and peeled out of the parking lot, drawing an angry shout from the officer. In my rearview mirror, I saw him speaking urgently with the attendant, then returning to his vehicle. Moments later, his lights flashed on, and he pulled onto the road behind me. The highway stretched before me, empty in the early morning light. How could I possibly escape when the very people sworn to protect were part of this conspiracy? I pressed the accelerator to the floor, the truck's engine protesting as I pushed it beyond its limits. The cruiser gained on me steadily, its siren now wailing. In my panic, I almost missed the highway sign indicating a fork ahead. One direction continued to Aberdeen, the other led east toward the interstate. I made a split-second decision, swerving onto the eastbound ramp. If I could reach the interstate, with its heavy traffic and travelers from outside the region, perhaps I would find help from people not bound by generations of unholy bargains with forest creatures. But as the truck struggled up a steep grade, the engine coughed, sputtered, and died, out of gas or simply giving up after the abuse I'd subjected it to. I coasted to the shoulder as the police cruiser closed the distance. There was nowhere left to run. As the officer approached my vehicle, hand on his holstered weapon, I had one final, desperate thought. No one knew where I was. My family thought I was safely traveling the Olympic Peninsula. My clients wouldn't expect photos for days. My van sat abandoned in those cursed woods, and soon I would disappear just like countless travelers before me. The officer tapped on my window, his face expressionless. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." As I complied, the rising sun illuminated the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. Somewhere in those ancient trees, creatures waited for darkness to fall again, secure in their arrangement with the humans who served them. And somewhere, perhaps, Ranger Anderson was still trying to save the next unsuspecting traveler, fighting a losing battle against a conspiracy too vast and too entrenched to defeat. I took one last look at the open road stretching eastward before the officer placed his hand firmly on my shoulder. "Let's get you back to Riverdale," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "There are some people there who have been looking for you." Rain splattered against the windshield of my van, blurring the world outside. I'm Ellie Harper, 29 years old, and I call Portland, Oregon, home, though I haven't slept there in months. My van, a beat-up Ford Econoline I named Rusty, is my world now, kitchen, bedroom, and escape pod all in one. I'd been chasing freedom on the open road for a year, parking in forests, deserts, and the occasional Walmart lot. Tonight, I was deep in Washington, near the Olympic National Forest, hunting for a quiet spot to crash. The trees loomed like silent giants, and the air smelled of damp pine. It felt peaceful, but something about the darkness made my stomach twist, a faint, nagging unease I couldn't shake. I wasn't alone on this trip. My friend Marcus, a 32-year-old photographer from Seattle, was sprawled in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone. We'd met at a Vanlife meetup last summer and hit it off over campfire stories and cheap beer. He was all charm and restless energy, always chasing the perfect shot. Then there was Lila, his 27-year-old cousin from Tacoma, curled up in the back on my fold-out bed. She was quieter, a librarian with a knack for spotting details others missed. They'd joined me for a week-long adventure, and we'd spent the day hiking trails near Lake Crescent, laughing about dumb stuff like who'd survive a zombie apocalypse. The plan was simple: find a pullout off the highway, cook some ramen, and sleep under the stars. I'd done it 100 times. But as I drove deeper into the forest, the road narrowed, and the GPS signal flickered. Marcus cracked a joke about getting lost, but I could tell he was half serious. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just the rain messing with me. Still, the farther we went, the more the woods felt alive. Not in a cozy, nature hug way, but in a way that made my skin prickle like something was watching. I spotted a gravel clearing just off the road and pulled over. It wasn't much, a patch of dirt surrounded by towering firs, but it'd do. I killed the engine, and the silence hit hard, broken only by the patter of rain. Lila sat up, rubbing her eyes, and asked if we were stopping for the night. I nodded, forcing a smile. Marcus was already digging through our food stash, complaining about my lack of snacks. I laughed, but that uneasy feeling clung to me, stubborn and cold, like a horror movie where you know the jump scare's coming. Setting up was routine. I popped open the side door, letting the damp air rush in, and started the propane stove. Marcus rigged a tarp over the door to keep us dry, swearing when it sagged. Lila pulled out her book, some creepy thriller, and read by headlamp. We were a team, each with our quirks. Marcus too loud, Lila too cautious, me too stubborn. I liked that about us. It felt safe. But as I stirred the noodles, I caught a glimpse of something through the trees, a flicker of movement, too quick to pin down. My heart skipped, but I told myself it was nothing. Just the rain playing tricks. Dinner was quick. We sat on camp chairs under the tarp, slurping ramen and swapping stories. Marcus told us about a shoot he did in an abandoned asylum, how the place felt haunted. Lila rolled her eyes, but admitted she'd felt weird vibes at her library late at night. I didn't say much, just listened, my eyes drifting to the dark beyond our little circle of light. The forest was too quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. I tried to shake it off, blaming the late hour and my tired brain. After we ate, I climbed into the driver's seat to check my phone. No signal, no surprise. I glanced at the map I'd downloaded earlier, trying to figure out how far we were from the main road. Marcus was outside, snapping photos of the van under the stars, his flash cutting through the dark. Lila was brushing her teeth, humming softly. Everything was normal, right? But that flicker I'd seen earlier, it stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. I told myself it was a deer or a raccoon. Had to be. I locked the doors, more out of habit than anything. Marcus climbed back in, smelling like wet earth, and showed me a blurry shot of the trees. "Spooky, huh?" he said, grinning. I forced a laugh, but my gut wasn't buying it. Lila tucked herself into a sleeping bag, already half asleep. I dimmed the lantern, leaving just enough light to see their faces. The van felt like a bubble, safe and warm, but outside, the forest pressed in, dark and endless. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just another night. As I crawled into my sleeping bag, I couldn't stop scanning the windows. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the world outside was a wall of black. I lay there, listening to Marcus's soft snores and Lila's steady breathing. My eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling. That twist in my stomach was still there, sharper now, like a warning I was too dumb to hear. I didn't know what was out there, but deep down, I felt it. Something disturbing, something waiting. I woke up to the van feeling too warm, my sleeping bag tangled around my legs. The air was thick, like we'd been breathing the same breath all night. I checked my phone, 3:17 a.m., still no signal. Marcus was sprawled across his seat, one arm dangling, and Lila was a lump under her blanket. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake that heavy feeling from last night. The forest outside was dead quiet, no rain, no wind, just a stillness that made my skin crawl. I told myself it was nothing, just my brain spinning horror stories in the dark, but I couldn't settle. I needed air. I slipped on my boots, careful not to wake the others, and cracked the side door. The cold hit me like a slap, sharp and clean. I stepped out, my breath puffing in the moonlight. The clearing looked different now, the trees tighter, like they'd crept closer while we slept. I scanned the shadows, half expecting to see that flicker again, but everything was still. Too still. I walked a few steps, my boots crunching on gravel, and noticed Rusty's front tire looked low. Great. A flat in the middle of nowhere was the last thing we needed. I crouched to check the tire, my fingers brushing the rubber. It wasn't flat, just low, probably fine for now, but it'd need air soon. I stood, wiping my hands, and that's when I saw it. A faint mark in the dirt near the van, like something had dragged across it. Not deep, not clear, but enough to make my stomach lurch. I froze, my eyes darting to the trees. Could have been an animal, maybe a branch caught in the wind. But the air was calm, and that mark felt wrong, like a clue in a scary movie you wish you'd ignored. I climbed back inside, locking the door quick. Marcus stirred, mumbling something about coffee, but didn't wake. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the mark through the windshield. My brain was screaming at me to chill, but my gut wouldn't listen. I thought about waking them, packing up, and bolting, but where would we go? The road back was long, and I didn't trust that tire. Plus, I'd look like a paranoid idiot dragging them out of bed over a scratch in the dirt. So I stayed put, watching, waiting for dawn. By morning, the mark didn't look so bad. Sunlight filtered through the trees, softening everything, making last night feel like a bad dream. Marcus was up, brewing coffee on the stove, humming some tune I didn't know. Lila was sketching in her notebook, her pencil scratching softly. I didn't mention the mark, didn't want to sound crazy, but I kept glancing at it while I sipped my coffee. Marcus noticed me staring and asked what was up. I shrugged, said I was just tired, but his eyes lingered on me, like he knew I was holding back. We decided to stay another day. The plan was to hike a loop trail nearby, maybe hit the lake again. Marcus wanted more photos, Lila wanted to sketch the water, and I just wanted to feel normal. But that tire was bugging me. I checked it again, and it looked lower than before. I kicked it, like that'd magically fix it, and told Marcus we should find a gas station soon. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't worried. Guys got a knack for ignoring problems till they bite him. Lila was the one who suggested we move the van closer to the trailhead, save us a walk. I liked the idea, less time on that sketchy tire, but when I started the engine, it coughed, like it was choking on something. My heart sank. I tried again, and it caught, but the sound wasn't right, all rough and unsteady. Marcus laughed, said Rusty was just old, but I wasn't so sure. I drove us a mile down the road, found a new spot near the trail, and parked. The engine quit with a shudder that felt personal, like a warning. We grabbed our packs and headed out, the forest bright and alive now, birds chirping like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't shake last night's vibe. Halfway down the trail, Lila stopped, her head tilted. She said she heard something, a low hum, like machinery, faint but steady. Marcus didn't hear it, and I didn't either, but her face was serious, not messing around. We stood there, listening, and I felt it again, that disturbing prickle, like we weren't alone out here. The hike went fine, but I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting what? A bear? A creep? Nothing showed, but the feeling stuck. Back at the van, I noticed something else. The side mirror was tilted wrong, like someone had bumped it. I fixed it, my hands shaky, and didn't say a word. Marcus was joking about dinner. Lila was sketching again, but my eyes were on the trees, searching for something I couldn't name. Whatever it was close, and I was starting to think we'd made a mistake staying here. Dusk settled over the forest, painting the trees in shades of gray. I leaned against Rusty, sipping lukewarm coffee, trying to act like everything was fine. Marcus was fiddling with his camera, muttering about low light, while Lila sat cross-legged on a blanket, sketching the clearing. My eyes kept drifting to that damn side mirror, still bugging me. I hadn't told them about it, didn't want to sound like I was losing it, but the way it was tilted felt deliberate, like someone had messed with it. The air felt heavier now, thick with a quiet that didn't sit right, like the world was holding its breath again. I suggested we eat inside tonight. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't argue, probably sensing my nerves. We climbed into the van, and I locked the doors, double-checking each one. Lila heated up canned chili, the smell filling the small space, but I barely touched mine. My stomach was in knots, that disturbing vibe from last night back and stronger. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting to see something, a face, a shadow, anything, but it was just black out there, an endless wall of nothing. Halfway through dinner, Lila froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She whispered, "Did you hear that?" I didn't, not at first, but then it came, a low scrape, like metal on wood, faint but close. Marcus laughed, said it was probably a branch, but his voice was tight. I shushed him, straining to listen. There it was again, slower this time, dragging along the side of the van. My heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself it could be an animal, but what kind of animal makes a sound like that? I killed the lantern, plunging us into dark. Marcus hissed at me to turn it back on, but I shook my head, whispering for him to shut up. We sat there, barely breathing, listening to the silence that followed. Then, thump, something hit the van, hard, near the back door. Lila gasped, and I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from yelping. It wasn't a branch, no way. That was heavy, intentional, like someone testing us. The horror of it sank in. We weren't alone out here. I crawled to the driver's seat, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the keys. Marcus was whispering questions. What was that? What do we do? But I didn't answer. I just wanted to start the van and peel out. But when I turned the key, the engine sputtered, same as before, only worse. It whined, coughed, and died. I tried again, my foot slamming the gas, but nothing. Panic clawed at me. Rusty, my lifeline, was betraying me when I needed it most. That scary feeling was suffocating now, like the air itself was against us. Lila grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. She pointed at the windshield, her voice barely a breath. There. I followed her finger, and my blood went cold. In the faint moonlight, something moved. Not a shape, not a person, but a distortion, like the air was bending. It was maybe 20 feet away, near the trees, and it wasn't right. Too tall, too thin, too something. I blinked, and it was gone, but my body screamed danger. Whatever it was watching us, and it wasn't friendly. Marcus, for once, wasn't joking. He pulled out his pocket knife, flipping it open like that'd do anything. I wanted to scream at him. What's a knife gonna do against that? But I didn't, because another sound cut through the dark. Footsteps, heavy and slow, circling the van. Not rushing, not hiding, just walking, like they had all the time in the world. My mind flashed to every horror story I'd ever heard, every warning about parking in the wrong place. We'd screwed up, and now we were paying for it. I fumbled for my phone, praying for a signal, but the screen mocked me with 0 bars. Lila was crying now, quiet sobs that made my chest ache. I whispered for her to stay calm, but I was barely holding it together myself. The footsteps stopped, and for a second, I thought it was over. Then the van rocked, hard, like something slammed into it from the side. We all screamed, scrambling to the middle, clinging to each other. The metal groaned, and I waited for it to happen again, my pulse deafening in my ears. No more sounds came, but that didn't help. The silence was worse, thick with dread, like whatever was out there was just waiting. I stared at the windows, expecting to see it, whatever it was, staring back. My mind raced, picking apart every choice that led us here. The low tire, the bad engine, parking in this damn clearing. Something was clearly wrong, and it wasn't just the van. It was this place, this night, and the disturbing truth that we'd stumbled into something we couldn't outrun. The van felt like a coffin, trapping us in the dark. My hands were still shaking from that last hit, the one that rocked Rusty like a toy. I whispered to Marcus and Lila, "We can't stay here." My voice sounded braver than I felt. The thing outside, whatever it was, hadn't moved again, but I could feel it, like a weight pressing on my chest. Lila nodded, her face pale, tears streaking her cheeks. Marcus gripped his knife tighter, his jaw set. We had to move, had to try, even if every instinct screamed to stay put. I grabbed the flashlight from under the seat, its beam weak, but better than nothing. I tried the engine one more time, praying Rusty would pull through. Nothing, just that same pathetic whine. My heart sank, but I didn't have time to curse. I hissed for them to grab what they could, phones, water, jackets. Lila stuffed her sketchbook in her bag, like it mattered, and Marcus snatched his camera. I didn't care about stuff. I just wanted us out. The plan was shaky. Slip out the side door, stick to the trees, and haul ass toward the highway. It was maybe 3 miles, but in the dark, with that thing out there, it felt like a death march. I cracked the door, slow as I could, wincing at the faint creak. The air outside was cold, sharp, and too quiet. My flashlight swept the clearing, empty for now. I motioned for them to follow, my pulse hammering so loud I thought it'd give us away. Lila went first, her sneakers silent on the dirt. Marcus was right behind, his knife out like he was ready to stab the dark itself. I shut the door, not locking it. What was the point? The van wasn't safe anymore. The forest loomed, a wall of black, and I led us toward it, every step feeling like a gamble. We hit the trees, branches snagging my jacket. I kept the light low, barely enough to see roots and rocks. Lila was breathing hard, too loud, and I whispered for her to slow it down. Marcus was scanning behind us, his head on a swivel. The highway was our only shot, but the dark made everything a maze. I thought of every scary movie where running makes it worse, but staying wasn't an option. That thing had hit the van like it wanted in, and I wasn't waiting to see what it'd do next. A twig snapped somewhere to our left. I froze, swinging the light. Nothing, just trees and shadows. Lila grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Marcus whispered, "Keep moving," but his voice cracked. We pushed on, faster now, my boots slipping on wet leaves. The forest felt alive, not in a good way, like it was watching, waiting to trip us up. I kept seeing that distortion in my head, that tall, wrong shape, and my stomach churned. Whatever it wasn't human, and that horror stuck with me, driving my legs forward. We'd gone maybe a half mile when Lila stumbled, her ankle twisting on a root. She bit back a cry, but it was loud enough to echo. I pulled her up, my hands clumsy, and glanced back. The dark was thicker now, like it was chasing us. Marcus hissed for us to hurry, but Lila was limping, slowing us down. I didn't want to admit it, but panic was clawing at me. This was a life or death moment, and we were losing. I swung the light again, and for a second, I thought I saw it. That same bent shape, flickering between trees, closer than before. I yanked Lila forward, half dragging her. The highway couldn't be far, right? But the trees kept going, endless, like the forest was stretching to trap us. My flashlight flickered, the battery dying at the worst possible time. I shook it, cursing under my breath, and it flared back on. Marcus was muttering something, maybe praying, his knife still out. I wanted to scream. None of this made sense. Why us? Why here? But screaming wouldn't help, and the disturbing truth was sinking in. We were prey, and this thing was hunting. We broke into a small clearing, and I thought maybe we'd made it. Then I heard it, a low hum, like Lila had described, but louder, vibrating in my bones. It came from everywhere, nowhere, filling the air with dread. Lila collapsed, sobbing, saying she couldn't go on. I knelt beside her, begging her to move, but her eyes were wide, fixed on something behind me. I turned, slow, my light catching it. That shape again, clearer now, impossibly tall, limbs too long, moving without sound. My scream stuck in my throat, and I yanked Lila up, running blind, Marcus right behind. The hum grew, drowning out our gasps, our footsteps. I didn't look back, couldn't. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but stopping wasn't an option. The trees thinned, and I saw it. The faint glow of headlights in the distance, the highway. Hope flared, sharp and desperate, but so did fear. That thing was close. I felt it, like a shadow on my back. We were running from great danger, and every second felt like it could be our last. The highway was so close, but so was whatever wanted us dead. The highway was right there, a ribbon of asphalt glowing under distant headlights. I pushed Lila ahead, her limp worse, but her fear stronger. Marcus was beside me, his breath ragged, his knife still clenched like it'd save us. The hum was deafening now, a pulse that shook my teeth, and I knew that thing was close, too close. My flashlight was dead, but the road's faint light was enough. I told myself we'd make it, flag down a car, get the hell out. But deep down, that horror was screaming. We'd messed up, and this was the price. We hit the pavement, stumbling, my knees scraping concrete. A truck roared past, its horn blaring, but it didn't stop. I waved my arms, yelling, my voice lost in the hum. Lila was crying, collapsed on the shoulder, and Marcus was scanning the trees, his face ghost white. I screamed for another car, anyone, but the road was empty now, mocking us. The hum softened, but that didn't feel like a win. It felt like a pause, like the thing was toying with us, letting us think we'd escaped. I pulled Lila to her feet, my hands shaking. "We keep moving," I said, more to myself than her. Marcus nodded, but his eyes were locked on the forest. He whispered, "It's still there." I didn't look, didn't want to, but I felt it, that disturbing weight, like eyes drilling into my skull. We shuffled along the shoulder, toward a faint light maybe a mile off. A gas station, I hoped. Every step was agony. Lila leaning on me, Marcus jumpy, but stopping wasn't an option. Not yet. A car's headlights flared behind us, and my heart leapt. I spun, waving, shouting, praying they'd see us. The sedan slowed, an older guy at the wheel, his face confused but kind. I babbled. "Van broke down. We're stranded. Please help." He nodded, said he'd take us to town, but we had to hurry. Relief hit me, but it was fragile, like glass. We piled in, Lila in the back, me and Marcus up front. The guy started driving, and I let myself breathe, thinking maybe we'd dodged the worst. Then Marcus made the mistake. He turned to me, his voice low, and said, "I left my camera in the van." I stared, my stomach dropping. He wasn't just saying it. He was thinking it, that dumb spark in his eyes. Before I could snap at him, he told the driver to stop, said he'd run back. It'd take 5 minutes. I grabbed his arm, hissing, "Are you insane?" But Marcus, stubborn, reckless Marcus, shook me off. He said he'd be fine. That thing was gone, right? The driver looked confused, but Marcus was already out, jogging back toward the forest. I screamed for him to stop, but he didn't listen. The driver hesitated, asking what was going on, but I couldn't explain, not without sounding crazy. Lila was sobbing again, begging me to go after him. I wanted to, God, I did, but my legs wouldn't move. The hum was back, faint but growing, and I knew Marcus wasn't coming back. The driver, spooked now, hit the gas, saying we'd get help in town. I stared out the back window, the dark swallowing the spot where Marcus vanished, my chest splitting open. We reached the gas station, a flickering oasis in the night. The driver ran inside, yelling for the clerk to call the cops. Lila clung to me, her body shaking, and I held her, but my eyes were on the road, on the forest beyond. I kept hoping I'd see Marcus, his stupid grin, his camera slung around his neck. But nothing came. The cops showed up, took our story, their faces skeptical but worried. They sent a unit to check the van, promised to look for Marcus. I nodded, numb, knowing they wouldn't find him, not alive. Hours later, at a motel in Port Angeles, Lila slept, exhausted. I sat by the window, staring at the dark, replaying everything. We'd parked in the wrong place, ignored the signs, and Marcus paid for it. The cops called at dawn. Van was empty, no sign of him, just that drag mark I'd seen, deeper now, leading nowhere. The tragedy wasn't just his death, it was the guilt, the what-ifs, the horror of knowing I'd led us there. I'd never drive Rusty again, never sleep in a forest. Some things you don't come back from. I don't know what that thing was, still don't. But it wasn't a bear, wasn't a man. It was something older, hungrier, tied to that forest in a way I'll never understand. Lila and I left Washington, went back to Portland, but we're not the same. She doesn't sketch anymore, and I can't sleep without checking the locks. The worst part? Sometimes, at night, I hear that hum, faint, like it's still out there, waiting for me to make another mistake. And I know, deep down, it's not done with us. Rain streaked down the windows of my van, turning the world outside into a blurry mess. I'm Nora Callahan, 31 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho, though I've been chasing the road for 2 years now. My van, a spruced-up Dodge Ram I call Juniper, is my home, bed, stove, and sanctuary rolled into one. Tonight, I was parked near Mount Rainier National Park in Washington, tucked into a gravel lot off a winding forest road. The pines stood tall, their branches swaying in the wind, and the air smelled like wet earth. It was supposed to be a quiet stop, but something about the place felt off, like a horror movie I didn't sign up for. I wasn't alone this time. My old friend Tessa, a 34-year-old barista from Spokane, was sprawled on the bench seat, flipping through a dog-eared paperback. We'd known each other since college, bonded over late-night talks and bad decisions. She was tough, always ready with a sarcastic quip, but her eyes had a haunted look lately, like she was running from something. Then there was Gabe, her 29-year-old co-worker, crashed out in the back on a pile of blankets. He was a musician, all easy smiles and restless energy, tagging along for a weekend of hiking and campfire jams. They'd joined me to escape the city grind, and I was happy for the company. We'd spent the day exploring trails near paradise, snapping photos of waterfalls and dodging muddy patches. Now, with the rain coming down hard, we were hunkered in for the night. I'd picked this spot because it was secluded, no crowds, no rangers, just us and the mountain. Juniper's heater hummed, keeping the chill at bay, and I was stirring a pot of mac and cheese, the cheesy smell filling the van. Tessa teased Gabe about his snoring, and he shot back with a grin, strumming an imaginary guitar. It felt cozy, safe, like we were untouchable. Still, I couldn't shake this weird vibe. The rain was loud, sure, but the forest felt too quiet underneath it, like it was hiding something. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see, I don't know, something scary staring back. I told myself it was just the storm messing with me. I'd parked in creepy places before, deserts, back roads, even a cemetery once, and nothing ever happened. But this lot, carved out of the woods like an afterthought, had me on edge, a disturbing itch I couldn't scratch. Dinner was ready, and we sat cross-legged, passing the pot around, scooping noodles straight from it. Tessa told a story about a customer at her shop who'd freaked her out, some guy who stared too long and asked weird questions. Gabe laughed, said she was paranoid, but I noticed how she gripped her spoon tighter. I didn't say much, just listened, my eyes flicking to the door. I'd locked it, always did, but I checked again, just to be sure. The wind howled, rattling Juniper's frame, and I forced a smile, acting like it was nothing. Gabe pulled out his guitar, a beat-up acoustic, and started picking a soft tune. It should have been relaxing, but every note felt like it was echoing into the dark, announcing us to whatever was out there. Tessa hummed along, but her eyes kept darting to the windows too. I wondered if she felt it, that same uneasy pull, like we'd stumbled into a place we didn't belong. I pushed the thought down, telling myself I was being dramatic. We were just three friends, chilling in a van, right? After dinner, I cleaned up, stacking dishes in my tiny sink. Gabe was still playing, quieter now, and Tessa was back to her book, a thriller about a missing hiker. I tried to focus on the moment, on the warmth inside Juniper, but my mind kept wandering to the forest outside. It was pitch black beyond the glass, the kind of dark that swallows everything. I dimmed the lantern, leaving just a soft glow, and climbed into the driver's seat to check my phone. No signal, no surprise, but the map showed we were miles from anything, towns, ranger stations, help. I glanced at Tessa and Gabe, their faces lit by the lantern's flicker. They were my crew for this trip, my little bubble of normal in the middle of nowhere. But that itch was still there, sharper now, like a warning I was too stubborn to hear. I told myself it was just the rain, the isolation, my imagination running wild. I'd been fine on 100 nights like this. So why did this one feel different? Why did it feel like something was waiting, just out of sight? As I settled into my sleeping bag, the van rocked gently in the wind. Gabe had stopped playing, and Tessa was already dozing, her book open on her chest. I lay there, eyes on the ceiling, listening to the rain's steady drum. My heart was beating too fast, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone out here. Not in a comforting way, like spirits or whatever, but in a way that made my skin crawl, a disturbing certainty that we'd parked somewhere we shouldn't have. I woke up gasping, my sleeping bag twisted like it was trying to choke me. The van was dark, the air stuffy, and my phone said 4:22 a.m. Tessa was curled up on the bench, her breathing soft, and Gabe was a snoring heap in the back. I rubbed my face, trying to shake the nightmare I couldn't quite remember. Something about running, shadows, a scream. The rain had stopped, leaving an eerie quiet that pressed against Juniper's walls. My gut was telling me something was off, a horror I couldn't name, but I told myself to chill. It was just a bad dream, right? I needed to move, so I slipped on my hoodie and crept to the side door. The cold bit my fingers as I eased it open, careful not to wake the others. Outside, the forest was still, the trees like silent guards under a sliver of moon. I stepped onto the gravel, my sneakers crunching too loud, and scanned the lot. Juniper looked fine, but something caught my eye. A smear on the rear window, like a handprint, faint but there. My stomach flipped. Could have been mud, maybe from the rain, but it looked wrong, too deliberate for nature. I walked around the van, my breath puffing in the chilly air, checking for anything else. The tires seemed okay, but one of the side panels had a scratch. Long, shallow, fresh. My heart sped up. I told myself it was probably a branch, but the forest was calm, no wind to blame. That handprint and scratch stuck in my head, like clues in a scary story I didn't want to read. I climbed back inside, locking the door fast, and sat there, staring at the dark, wondering if I should wake Tessa and Gabe. By morning, the lot looked less creepy. Sunlight spilled through the trees, turning the pines golden, and the smear on the window was barely visible. Maybe I'd imagined how bad it was. Tessa was up, brewing coffee with her camp stove, her hair a mess. Gabe was stretching, cracking jokes about his back hurting from my luxury setup. I didn't mention the handprint or the scratch, didn't want them thinking I was paranoid, but I kept glancing at the van, my nerves jangling like loose change. We talked over breakfast, granola bars, and bitter coffee. The plan was to hike to a lookout point Tessa found online, maybe catch a view of Rainier if the clouds parted. But Juniper was acting up. The battery light had flickered last night when I tested the ignition. I brushed it off then, but now it bugged me. Gabe said it was probably nothing. Old vans are quirky, but I wasn't so sure. I suggested we drive to a ranger station first, check the battery, but Tessa wanted to hike, said we'd deal with it later. I gave in, not wanting to argue, but it felt like a mistake. We packed up, and I noticed something else. My water jug, the one I'd left under the van, was tipped over, the cap gone. Water soaked the gravel, and I swore I hadn't touched it. Gabe laughed, said maybe a raccoon got thirsty, but Tessa's eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of worry. We didn't say it, but we were both thinking, raccoons don't unscrew lids. That disturbing vibe from last night was back, whispering that we weren't as alone as we thought. The hike started fine, the trail winding through ferns and mossy rocks. Gabe led, humming some tune, while Tessa and I lagged, her muttering about how she hated mornings. I kept looking back, half expecting to see someone, or something, following. The forest was loud with birds now, but it felt like a mask, hiding something darker. I thought about that handprint again, how it didn't look random, and my skin prickled. I told myself I was overreacting, but my gut wasn't buying it. About a mile in, Tessa stopped, her head tilted. "You hear that?" she asked. I listened, nothing but wind and birds. Gabe shrugged, but she insisted, said it was a hum, low and weird, like a machine buried somewhere. I didn't hear it, but her face was dead serious, and it reminded me of a story I'd read about hikers hearing stuff in these woods, stuff that wasn't there. We kept going, but I noticed Tessa slowing, her eyes scanning the trees, like she was waiting for something to jump out. Back at the van, I checked the battery again, hoping it'd start clean. It did, but the engine sounded rough, like it was chewing gravel. Gabe was all, "See? Told you it's fine," but I wasn't convinced. I suggested moving closer to the park entrance, just in case, but Tessa wanted to stay put. "Better view," she said. I didn't push, though I should have. As we set up for the night, I caught another glimpse of that scratch in the daylight, and it looked deeper, like it had been carved slow. I didn't say a word, but that horror was growing, telling me we'd parked in the wrong damn place. Twilight clung to the forest, turning the trees into jagged silhouettes. I was rinsing dishes in a bucket outside Juniper, the cold water numbing my fingers. Tessa was inside, reading by lantern light, and Gabe was strumming his guitar, the notes drifting through the open door. My eyes kept flicking to that scratch on the van, the one I couldn't explain. It looked sharper in the fading light, like it was mocking me. The air felt heavy, charged, like a storm was brewing, but the sky was clear. That uneasy twist in my gut was back, sharper now, whispering horror I couldn't ignore. I dumped the water and stood, wiping my hands. That's when I saw it, a flicker in the trees, not a shadow but something off, like the air itself warped. It was quick, gone before I could blink, but my heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself it was a deer, maybe a trick of the light, but it didn't feel right. Too tall, too smooth, like it didn't belong in this world. I froze, staring into the dark, waiting for it to show again. The forest was quiet, too quiet. and that scary silence wrapped around me like a noose. I climbed back into the van, locking the door with a click that felt too loud. Tessa looked up, her brow furrowed. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, but my hands were shaky, and I couldn't meet her eyes. Gabe kept playing, oblivious, but I saw Tessa glance at the window, like she sensed it too. I didn't tell them about the flicker, didn't want to sound unhinged, but I turned off the lantern, leaving us in the glow of a single candle. The dark outside pressed against the glass, and I felt trapped, like we'd parked in the middle of something disturbing. Then it came, a low thud, right against the van's side. Not loud, but solid, like someone leaned into it. Gabe stopped mid-strum, his fingers hovering. Tessa's book hit the floor. We sat there, holding our breath, waiting. Another thud, slower, near the back door. My pulse roared in my ears. I whispered, "What the hell was that?" But no one answered. Gabe grabbed his guitar like a club, his knuckles white. Tessa crawled to me, her eyes wide. This wasn't a branch, not an animal. It felt deliberate, like something testing us. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands clumsy, and pointed it at the window. Nothing, just black. But the beam shook, giving away how scared I was. The thud stopped, and for a second, I thought maybe it was over. Then Tessa gasped, pointing at the rear window. I swung the light, and there it was, that handprint from last night, but clearer now, bigger, pressed into the glass like it had just been made. My stomach lurched. It wasn't mud, wasn't human. It had too many fingers, too long, smudged in a way that screamed wrong. I killed the light, plunging us into dark. Gabe hissed, "Turn it back on." But I shushed him, my voice barely a whisper. "It's out there," I said, and they didn't argue. We huddled in the middle, the candle flickering, throwing shadows that made my skin crawl. Then came a new sound, scratching, slow and sharp, dragging along the van's roof. Not random, not wind. It was steady, like someone carving their name. The horror of it hit me. Whatever this was, it knew we were here, and it wasn't leaving. Tessa was trembling, her nails digging into my arm. Gabe whispered, "We gotta go now," but I didn't move. The engine was iffy, and running blind felt like suicide. I tried to think, stay put, wait for dawn, or risk it. But that scratching kept going, circling above us, and my mind screamed that staying was worse. I crawled to the driver's seat, keys in hand, praying Juniper would start. The key turned, and the engine coughed, sputtered, then died. I cursed, slamming the wheel, panic clawing at me. We were stuck, and that thing was closing in. Another sound cut through, a low hum, just like Tessa had heard, but louder, vibrating through the van. It wasn't mechanical, wasn't natural. It was alive, pulsing, making my teeth ache. Tessa whimpered, saying it was the same sound from the trail, worse now. Gabe was muttering, "No, no, no," like a mantra. I tried the engine again, nothing. The hum grew, and with it, a shadow passed the side window, tall and warped, gone in a blink. My scream caught in my throat. This wasn't a prank, wasn't my imagination. Something was clearly wrong, and it was here for us. The scratching stopped, but the hum didn't. It felt like it was inside my skull, pushing out every thought except fear. I looked at Tessa and Gabe, their faces pale in the candlelight, and saw my own terror mirrored back. We'd made a mistake parking here, ignoring the signs, the handprint, the scratch, that flicker. Now we were trapped, surrounded by a forest that didn't want us, hunted by something I couldn't understand. My hands gripped the keys, useless now, and I waited, dreading what came next, knowing it'd be worse than anything I'd ever faced. The hum was a knife in my skull, shaking my bones as I gripped the steering wheel. Juniper was dead, the engine refusing to turn, and that thing outside was circling us. Tessa was curled up, sobbing quietly, while Gabe clutched his guitar like it'd save him. I whispered, "We can't stay." My voice cracked, but I meant it. This van wasn't safe anymore. That warped shadow, the handprint, the scratching, it was all too real, too close. The horror was suffocating, and I knew if we didn't move, we'd die here. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam faint, and told them to pack light and be ready to run. I cracked the side door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it'd burst. The forest was black, the hum pulsing like a heartbeat. I scanned the lot. Nothing, but that didn't mean safe. Tessa grabbed her bag, Gabe stuffed a water bottle in his pocket, and I led the way, stepping onto gravel that crunched like gunfire. The plan was simple: head for the park road, maybe a mile off, and pray for a car or a ranger. Every step felt like a bet against death, but staying in the van was a losing hand. I kept the light low, my eyes darting for that shadow, that thing. We hit the trees, branches clawing at my face. Tessa was right behind, her breathing ragged, and Gabe kept muttering, "This is bad, this is bad." I hissed for him to shut up, but I got it. Fear was choking us all. The hum followed, softer but steady, like it was tracking us. I tripped on a root, nearly dropping the flashlight, and caught myself, my hands scraping bark. My mind flashed to every scary movie where running fails, but what choice did we have? That thing had marked the van, marked us, and it wasn't stopping. We pushed deeper, the forest a maze of shadows. My flashlight flickered, and I shook it, cursing under my breath. Tessa grabbed my arm, whispering, "It's behind us." I didn't look, couldn't, but I felt it, a weight on my back, like eyes burning through me. We moved faster, Tessa stumbling, Gabe helping her up. The road had to be close, but the trees kept going, endless, like they were conspiring to trap us. That disturbing hum grew louder, and I knew we were running out of time. A clearing opened up, and I thought we'd made it. Then Gabe yelped, his voice sharp. I spun, the light catching something. Tall, wrong, limbs bending where they shouldn't, just beyond the trees. It didn't move, just stood there, watching. My scream died in my throat, and I shoved Tessa forward, yelling, "Go!" We ran, blind panic driving us, branches snapping underfoot. The hum was deafening now, vibrating my chest, and I felt that thing closing in, its presence a cold blade against my spine. Tessa tripped, her knee hitting a rock, and she cried out. I pulled her up, my hands slippery with sweat, but she was slowing us down. Gabe was wild-eyed, shouting to keep moving, but I saw the fear in him, the kind that breaks you. My flashlight died, plunging us into dark, and I fumbled for my phone, its weak glow barely enough. The road was close. I could smell asphalt, but so was that thing. I heard it now, not footsteps, but a glide, like it didn't need to touch the ground. This was life or death, and we were losing. We broke through the trees, the park road glinting under moonlight. Relief hit me, sharp and fragile, but the hum was right there, wrapping around us. I waved my phone, screaming for help, but the road was empty, no cars, no lights. Tessa was limping bad, leaning on Gabe, and I kept glancing back, expecting to see it, that twisted shape, lurching out. My lungs burned, my legs shook, but stopping wasn't an option. We had to keep going, find help, or we'd be another story no one believed. A faint rumble grew, a car, headlights cutting the dark. I stumbled into the road, waving my arms, yelling like a maniac. The pickup slowed, an older woman at the wheel, her face confused but worried. I babbled, "Van broke down, something's after us, please." She nodded, said to get in, and we piled into the bed, Tessa wincing, Gabe shaking. The truck roared forward, and I thought maybe we'd escaped. But the hum didn't stop. It followed, faint but stubborn, like it wasn't done with us. I clung to the truck's side, watching the forest blur past. Tessa was crying, Gabe staring at nothing, and I felt that thing's gaze, even now, like a hook in my chest. The road stretched on, the woman saying something about a ranger station, but my mind was stuck on what we'd seen. That shape, that hum, that horror. We were running from great danger, and every second felt borrowed, like we'd only delayed the inevitable. The station was close, but so was the feeling that we'd never really get away. The ranger station was a squat building, its lights harsh against the night. The woman dropped us off, saying she'd wait for the cops. I helped Tessa inside, her knees swollen, while Gabe paced, his hands in his hair. The ranger, a gruff guy named Carl, listened to my story. Van dead, something in the woods, we ran. His eyes narrowed, like he thought we were high, but he called it in. I sat on a bench, my body heavy, the hum still faint in my ears. That scary truth was sinking in. We'd escaped, but not whole, not safe. Something was wrong, and it wasn't over. Tessa was shivering, her face pale. I wrapped a blanket around her, trying to focus, but my mind kept replaying that shape. Too tall, too wrong. Gabe was muttering about going back for his guitar, left in the van. I snapped, forget it, but his eyes had that stubborn glint, the kind that gets people killed. He said it was his dad's, worth more than anything, and he'd be quick. I grabbed his sleeve, begging him not to, but he shook me off, saying the Ranger would drive him. My stomach sank. This was bad, a mistake we'd pay for. Carl agreed, against my protests, saying they'd check the van and be back in an hour. Gabe gave me a weak smile, like he thought it'd be fine, and climbed into the Ranger's truck. I screamed for him to stop, but the door slammed, and they peeled out. Tessa gripped my hand, her nails biting, whispering, "He's not coming back." I wanted to argue, to believe Gabe's luck would hold, but that hum was louder now, like it knew he was heading right for it. The horror of it choked me. We'd fought so hard, and now this. The woman, Linda, stayed with us, her face tight. She said she'd heard stories about these woods. Hikers vanishing, strange lights, sounds no one could explain. I didn't want to hear it, but it fit, like pieces of a puzzle I'd ignored. The station's clock ticked, each second stretching, and I kept checking the window, hoping for headlights. Tessa was quiet, her eyes empty, and I felt it too. That disturbing weight, like we'd brought something with us, or it had followed. The hum was in my head, or maybe outside. I couldn't tell anymore. An hour passed, then two. No Gabe, no Carl. Linda called the cops again, her voice sharp now. They said another unit was on the way, but the wait was torture. I paced, my boots scuffing the floor, replaying every moment, parking there, ignoring the handprint, letting Gabe go. Tessa blamed herself, said she should have stopped him, but it was me. I'd led us to that lot, trusted Juniper to keep us safe. The tragedy was building, and I knew it had hit hard, a debt we couldn't pay. Cops showed up at dawn, their faces grim. They'd found the Ranger's truck, empty, doors open, a mile from our van. Juniper was there, scratched up worse, windows smashed, but no sign of Gabe or Carl. They asked questions, drugs, drinking, mental health, like we'd made it up. I wanted to scream. That thing took them, it's real. But I just sat there, numb, Tessa crying beside me. The hum was gone now, but its absence felt worse, like it had won and didn't need to chase us anymore. Linda drove us to a motel in Enumclaw. Tessa slept, dosed with painkillers for her knee, but I couldn't close my eyes. I saw Gabe smile, his dumb courage, and Carl, just doing his job. Gone, because of us, because of me. The cops kept searching, but I knew they'd find nothing. Not bodies, not answers. That thing wasn't human, wasn't animal. It was something older, tied to those woods, and we'd walked right into its trap. The guilt was a blade, cutting deeper every time I thought of Gabe's guitar, left behind for nothing. We left Washington a week later, Tessa back to Spokane, me to Boise. I sold Juniper, couldn't stand to look at it. Tessa calls sometimes, but we don't talk about that night, not really. I still hear the hum, faint, usually at night, like a reminder. I check my locks, my windows, always waiting for that shadow to show again. The worst part? I know it's out there, in those woods or others, waiting for someone else to make the same deadly mistake we did, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I don't camp anymore, don't trust the dark. Gabe's gone, Carl's gone, and a piece of me went with them. The forest took what it wanted, left us to carry the scars. Sometimes I dream of that shape, standing just out of reach, and I wake up screaming, knowing it's not over. It'll never be over. We ran, we fought, but the real tragedy is living with it, knowing I led us there, and no amount of running will ever make it right. Fog curled around my van like a ghost, smudging the trees into shadows. I'm Caleb Morrow, 28 years old, and I live in Missoula, Montana, though I haven't been back in months. My rig, a patched-up Chevy Express I called Dusty, is my home now, bed, stove, and a creaky table for late-night cards. Tonight, I was parked near the Skagit River in Washington, just outside North Cascades National Park, on a dirt pullout I'd found by dumb luck. The river's rush was loud, but the air had a bite, and something about this place felt heavy, like a horror story waiting to start. I wasn't flying solo. My buddy Ryan, a 30-year-old mechanic from Bellingham, was sprawled in the passenger seat, cracking open a beer. We'd been friends since high school, always chasing trouble, hiking, fishing, or just raising hell. He was solid, quick with a laugh, but his eyes carried a restlessness I didn't push him on. Then there was Jess, his 26-year-old sister, sketching on my fold-out bed in the back. She was an artist, quiet but sharp, with a habit of noticing things most people missed. They'd hopped in for a long weekend, craving a break from their routines. We'd spent the day messing around, fishing in the river, skipping rocks, dodging rain showers. Now, with the fog rolling thick, we were settled in for the night. Dusty's heater was on its last legs, so we bundled in jackets, the air inside sharp with cold. I was heating chili on the stove, the spicy smell mixing with the damp outside. Ryan was telling a story about a bar fight he'd seen, his hands waving, while Jess rolled her eyes but smiled. It was good, easy, like we could outrun the world in this van. Still, I couldn't shake a weird vibe. The fog was so dense I couldn't see 10 feet past the windows, and the river's roar felt like it was hiding something. I'd parked here because it was free and quiet. No sign saying I couldn't, but now it felt too quiet, like the kind of quiet that sets up a scare. I kept glancing outside, half expecting to spot something in the mist, something scary I couldn't explain. I told myself it was just the weather, but my gut wasn't buying it. Dinner was ready, and we sat around my tiny table, scooping chili from mismatched bowls. Jess teased Ryan about his cooking, said he'd burn water, and he fired back, grinning. I laughed, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows, fog pressing against the glass like it wanted in. I'd done this 100 times, parked in weird spots from deserts to mountains, and never felt this on edge. Maybe it was the isolation, maybe the fog, but a disturbing little voice in my head whispered I'd picked the wrong place to stop. Ryan pulled out a deck of cards, dealing us a round of poker to pass the time. Jess was good, bluffing with a smirk, while Ryan folded every hand, swearing he'd get us next time. The game kept things light, but I noticed Jess pause sometimes, her pencil tapping, like she heard something I didn't. I didn't ask, didn't want to sound jumpy, but I felt it too, a prickle on my neck, like we weren't as alone as we thought. The fog muffled everything, turning Dusty into a tiny island in a sea of gray. After a few hands, I stepped outside to stretch, needing air despite the chill. The fog swallowed me, cold and wet, and the river sounded closer, angrier. I checked Dusty's locks, habit from too many sketchy lots, and noticed the ground was soft, tire tracks deeper than I'd expected. Could have been the rain, but it bugged me, like someone else had been here. I shook it off, climbed back in, and cranked the heater, ignoring the faint rattle it made. Ryan was shuffling cards, Jess sketching again, and I tried to focus on them, not the dark. Inside, we swapped stories. Ryan about a creepy toe job in the middle of nowhere, Jess about a weird gallery client who gave her chills. I didn't add much, too distracted by the fog, the way it seemed to move, almost alive. I dimmed the lantern, leaving just enough light to see their faces, and locked the doors again, double-checking. The van felt safe, a bubble against whatever was out there, but that prickle wouldn't quit, like a warning I was too stubborn to hear. As I settled into my sleeping bag, Ryan was already snoring, cards scattered on the table. Jess was still up, her pencil scratching softly, her eyes flicking to the window now and then. I lay there, listening to the river, the fog pressing closer, and felt it, a tug of dread, like we'd stumbled into something we couldn't outdrive. I told myself it was nothing, just a long day and a creepy night, but deep down, I knew this place had a horror waiting to show itself, and we were right in its path. I woke to a chill that cut through my sleeping bag, my breath fogging in the dark. Dusty's heater had crapped out sometime in the night, leaving the van icy. I'm Caleb Morrow, and I was parked by the Skagit River, the fog still thick outside. My phone read 5:03 a.m. No bars, no surprise. Ryan was snoring like a chainsaw in the passenger seat, and Jess was a curled-up shape in the back, her sketchbook open beside her. My neck ached, but it wasn't just that. A nagging horror from last night's weird vibe was still there, like a bad taste I couldn't spit out. I pulled on my boots and slipped outside, the fog swallowing me whole. The river roared nearby, louder than it should have been, and the air smelled of mud and something sharp, like rust. I checked Dusty's tires. Fine, but the ground around them was churned up, more than just our tracks. My gut twisted. Could have been an animal, maybe a hiker passing through, but it looked fresh, messy, like something had been here while we slept. That disturbing prickle ran up my spine, and I scanned the fog, seeing nothing but gray. Back inside, I tried the heater, no dice, just a sad click. Great. Starting the day freezing wasn't my idea of fun, and I knew Ryan would bitch about it. I thought about waking them, telling them about the tracks, but what would I say? Hey, something creepy walked around our van. I'd sound like a nutcase. Instead, I fiddled with the battery cables under the hood, hoping it was a quick fix. They looked okay, but when I tried the ignition, Dusty coughed and died, same as the heater. My heart sank. Stranded wasn't a good look out here. Morning hit slow, the fog thinning just enough to show the river's edge. Ryan was up, grumbling about the cold, while Jess boiled water for instant coffee, her eyes puffy but alert. I didn't mention the tracks or the engine, but I kept glancing outside, half expecting to see something. Over coffee, we planned the day, hike a trail along the river, maybe fish if the weather cleared. But the van bugged me. I suggested driving to a garage in Marble Mount, 10 miles away, to check the battery. Ryan waved it off, said we'd deal with it tomorrow, and Jess nodded, distracted, her pencil tapping. I should have pushed harder, but I didn't. We packed day bags, water, snacks, Jess's sketchbook, and locked Dusty, though the key stuck, another thing going wrong. The trail was muddy, the river a constant growl to our left. Ryan led, joking about bears, but Jess was quiet, her eyes on the trees. I felt it too, a weight in the air, like the fog was watching us. I kept checking behind, thinking of those tracks, how they didn't look right, how they screamed scary without saying why. Halfway down the trail, Jess stopped, her head cocked. "You hear that?" she asked, voice low. Ryan snorted, said it was just the river, but I listened. Nothing at first, then a faint whine, like a machine underwater, barely there. I didn't hear it again, but Jess's face was tight, and I remembered her noticing stuff before, like a customer's vibe or a weird shadow. We kept moving, but the whine stuck with me, a piece of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. The forest felt off, like it was holding its breath. Back at the van, I tried the engine again, same cough, same silence. Ryan swore, finally getting why I was worried, but he still didn't want to hike to town yet. Jess was sketching the river, her lines sharp, almost angry. I noticed something else. The side mirror was crooked, like someone had nudged it. I fixed it, my hands shaky, and didn't tell them. Could have been me bumping it, but deep down, I knew better. That horror was growing, tying the tracks, the whine, the mirror into something I couldn't ignore. We decided to stay another night, my dumbest call yet. Ryan wanted to fish at dusk, just wanted to draw more, and I didn't want to seem like a coward. But I checked Dusty's locks twice, and when I climbed inside, I saw it. A smudge on the windshield, like a finger had dragged through the condensation from the outside. My blood went cold. I wiped it away, pretending it was nothing, but my eyes kept darting to the fog, thicker now, like it was hiding something waiting to pounce. As we ate jerky and crackers for dinner, Ryan told another story, but his heart wasn't in it. Jess barely spoke, her pencil scratching, and I couldn't sit still, pacing Dusty's tiny floor. The river's roar was deafening, but it wasn't enough to drown out that feeling. Something was out there, close, and we'd stayed too long. I locked the doors again, my fingers fumbling, and tried to act normal, but that disturbing truth was clawing at me. We weren't safe, and whatever was watching us was getting bolder. Dusk bled into the fog, turning the river into a gray smear outside Dusty's windows. I was crouched by the stove, heating water for tea, trying to ignore the chill that wouldn't quit. Ryan was messing with his fishing rod, muttering about tomorrow's catch, while Jess sat cross-legged, her sketchbook open but untouched. That smudge on the windshield was still in my head, along with the tracks and the mirror, little things piling up, screaming scary in a way I couldn't shake. The fog felt alive, pressing against the van, and my gut was yelling that we'd overstayed our welcome in this horror show. I handed Jess a mug, and she took it without looking up, her eyes fixed on the window. "Something's out there," she whispered, so quiet I almost missed it. Ryan scoffed, said it was just the fog playing tricks, but I saw his hands tighten on the rod. I didn't say anything, didn't trust my voice, but I felt it too, a weight in the air, like the river itself was watching us. I locked the doors again, the click loud in the silence, and dimmed the lantern, leaving just a flicker to see by. The dark outside was too thick, too close. Then it hit, a sharp bang against the van's side, like a fist slamming metal. We froze. Ryan's rod clattered to the floor, and Jess's mug slipped, splashing tea everywhere. My heart jackhammered, and I hissed, "What the hell?" No one answered. Another bang, slower, near the back door, heavy enough to dent the frame in my mind. This wasn't a branch, wasn't a bear. It felt like a message, a disturbing promise. I grabbed my flashlight, hands shaking, and pointed it at the window. Nothing, just fog, but that didn't calm me. I killed the light, plunging us into near dark. Ryan whispered, "Caleb, turn it on," but I shook my head, barely breathing. We listened, the silence worse than the bangs, like whatever was out there was waiting us out. Then Jess gasped, pointing at the side window. I looked, and my stomach dropped. A shape, vague but tall, slid through the fog, gone in a blink. Not human, not animal. Too wrong, too fluid, like it was part of the mist itself. The horror of it locked my lungs, and I knew we were in deep. Ryan crawled to the driver's seat, swearing under his breath, and tried the key. Dusty whined, same dead sputter as before. I wanted to scream at the van, at us, for staying here, but panic was choking me. Jess was trembling, her sketchbook crushed against her chest, whispering. It's what I heard, that whine. I didn't get it at first, then remembered, the sound on the trail, now louder, humming through the van's walls, low and alive. It wasn't mechanical, it was something else, something that made my skin crawl. Another sound came, scratching, not metal this time but glass, slow and deliberate, along the windshield. I didn't look, couldn't, but Jess's eyes were wide, locked on it. "It's back," she said, voice breaking. I forced myself to peek, and there it was, another smudge, fresh, streaking the glass like a claw had dragged through the fog. My mind screamed run, but where? The van was our only shield, and it was failing. That thing was toying with us, and the scary truth was sinking in, it wasn't leaving. I grabbed Ryan's arm, whispering, "We gotta do something." He nodded, but his face was pale, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Jess was rocking now, muttering about the sketches she'd done, trees, the river, but something else, something she hadn't shown us. I didn't ask, didn't have time. The humming grew, vibrating my teeth, and the van rocked, not hard, but enough to make us flinch. It wasn't hitting us yet, just testing, like a cat with a mouse. Every nerve was screaming that this was life or death, and we were losing. The scratching stopped, but the hum didn't. It pulsed, louder, like it was inside the van, inside me. Ryan fumbled for his pocket knife, flipping it open, but it looked pathetic against whatever was out there. I tried the engine again, desperate, my foot slamming the pedal. Nothing. Jess was crying now, soft but steady, and I wanted to hug her, to promise we'd be okay, but I couldn't lie. That shape in the fog, the bangs, the hum, it was all wrong, a nightmare we couldn't wake from. We huddled in the middle, the lantern's flicker throwing shadows that made my heart race. No more bangs, no scratches, just that hum, endless and cruel, like it was laughing at us. I kept expecting the windows to shatter, for that thing to rip through, but it didn't. Not yet. My mind spun, stay put, wait for dawn, or risk running. Every choice felt like a trap. Something was clearly wrong, not just with Dusty but with this place, this night, and the disturbing certainty that we'd parked in something's territory, and it was coming for us. The hum was a living thing, clawing inside my skull as I gripped Jess's hand. Dusty was a tomb, the fog outside thick with that shape's threat. Ryan was panting, his knife shaking, and I whispered, "We're leaving. Now." My voice sounded braver than I felt. The horror of staying was worse than running. That thing had marked the van, scratched the glass, and I knew it'd break through soon. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam half dead, and told them to take only what they needed, water, phones, nothing else. We were running, and every second counted. I eased the side door open, my heart slamming so hard I thought it'd crack a rib. The fog swallowed everything. The river's roar a dull growl beneath that awful hum. I stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots, and swept the light. Nothing, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pushing back. Jess followed, clutching her jacket, and Ryan was last, his knife out like it'd do jack. I locked eyes with them, nodding toward the river trail. We'd follow it to the road, maybe 2 miles, and pray for help. It was a long shot, but staying was suicide. We hit the trail, fog curling around us like fingers. Branches snagged my sleeves, and Jess's breathing was too loud. Sharp gasps I couldn't hush. Ryan kept looking back, muttering curses, his knife glinting in my light. The hum chased us, softer but steady, like it knew we couldn't outrun it. My flashlight flickered, and I smacked it, panic rising. The trail was a blur. Mud, roots, rocks, and every step felt like a dare. That scary shape was out there. I felt it, watching, waiting to pounce. We'd gone maybe a half-mile when Jess stumbled, her foot catching a stone. She hit the ground hard, a yelp escaping before I could shush her. I pulled her up, her wrist limp, maybe sprained. Ryan hissed to keep moving, but she was slow now, wincing with every step. My light caught something, marks in the mud, not ours, too wide, too deep. My stomach lurched. I didn't say it, but we all knew. It was following, and we were leaving a trail it could track. This was life or death, and we were bleeding time. The trail curved, the river louder now, and I thought maybe we were close. Then Ryan froze, pointing into the fog. I swung the light, and there it was, that shape again, taller than before, limbs bending wrong, standing maybe 30 feet off. It didn't move, just watched, its outline smudging the fog like ink in water. Jess whimpered, and I grabbed her, dragging her forward, yelling, "Run!" We bolted, my light bouncing, the hum swelling until it shook my bones. It was hunting us, and we were prey. My lungs burned, legs screaming, but stopping wasn't an option. Jess was lagging, her wrist clutched to her chest, and Ryan was wild-eyed, shouting to keep going. The trail opened, and I saw it, a glint of asphalt, the road. Hope spiked, sharp and desperate, but so did fear. The hum was deafening, and I felt that thing behind us, closer, its presence a cold weight. I tripped, scraping my palms, and scrambled up, pulling Jess with me. The road was empty, no cars, no lights, but it was something, a chance. We hit the pavement, stumbling, my flashlight dead now. I used my phone's glow, weak but enough to see Jess's pale face, Ryan's clenched jaw. The hum shifted, like it was circling, and I waved my phone, screaming for help, my voice raw. A faint rumble grew. Headlights, a truck, slowing as it saw us. I ran into the road, arms flailing, yelling, "Stop!" The driver, a grizzled guy, leaned out, confused but nodding when I begged for a ride. We piled in, Jess in the back, me and Ryan up front, my heart still racing, the hum fading but not gone. The truck roared forward, the driver saying he'd take us to Marble Mount, 10 minutes away. I leaned against the seat, gasping, thinking maybe we'd made it. Jess was shaking, Ryan staring out the window, his knife still out. I wanted to believe we'd escaped, but that disturbing vibe clung to me, like the fog had seeped into my skin. The road stretched on, dark and endless, and I kept glancing back, expecting to see that shape lurching after us. We were running from great danger, but it felt like we'd only bought time, not freedom. Every bump in the road made me flinch, my mind stuck on those marks, that hum, that thing. The driver asked what happened, and I mumbled about a breakdown, not ready to sound crazy. Jess was silent, her eyes glassy, and Ryan's hands shook as he pocketed his knife. The truck's headlights cut the fog, but not my fear. It was still there, sharp, telling me we weren't safe yet. Marble Mount was close, a speck of light ahead, but so was the feeling that we'd never really outrun what was back there. Marble Mount's lights were a lifeline, the gas station's neon cutting through the fog. The driver, Tom, dropped us off, saying he'd stick around till we got help. I helped Jess out, her wrists swollen, her face pale as death. Ryan was pacing, muttering about the van, his eyes darting to the dark. The station clerk called the sheriff, and we waited, huddled on a bench, the hum gone, but its echo in my head. That horror was real now. We'd seen it, felt it, and the scary truth was we weren't whole anymore. Something had broken, and it wasn't just Dusty. I tried to focus, telling the clerk bits of our story. Van died, something chased us, but my words felt thin, like I was leaving out the worst parts. Jess was shivering, her jacket too thin, and I gave her mine, wishing I could do more. Ryan was the problem. He kept talking about going back, saying he'd left his wallet in Dusty, his ID, his cash. I snapped, forget it, but his jaw was set, that stubborn streak I knew too well. He said he'd hitch a ride, be quick, like it was no big deal. My gut screamed it was a mistake, but he wasn't listening. The sheriff arrived, a tired woman named Ruiz, taking notes as I stumbled through our night. Ryan cut in, saying he needed to check the van. Could she drive him? I grabbed his arm, begging, "Don't, man, it's not safe." Jess backed me up, her voice shaky, but Ryan shook us off, saying we were paranoid. The thing was gone. Ruiz hesitated, then agreed, saying they'd be careful. I yelled as he climbed into her cruiser, "Ryan, please," but the door slammed, and they were gone, taillights fading into the fog. My chest split open. I knew he was walking into a trap. Jess and I sat there, Tom hovering nearby, his face worried. He said these woods had stories, missing hikers, weird lights, stuff cops didn't talk about. I didn't want to hear it, but it fit, like a knife in a wound. The clock above the counter ticked, each minute dragging, and Jess whispered, "He's not coming back, is he?" I couldn't answer, couldn't lie. The hum was faint again, or maybe I imagined it, but it felt like a taunt, like that thing was laughing. We'd fought so hard, and now Ryan was throwing it away. Hours passed, no word. Tom drove us to a motel, saying we shouldn't stay out here. Jess crashed, her wrist wrapped, but I couldn't sleep, my eyes on the window, waiting for headlights that didn't come. At dawn, another deputy showed up, face grim. They'd found Ruiz's cruiser, doors open, radio dead, a mile from Dusty. The van was trashed, windows gone, scratches everywhere, blood on the seats. No Ryan, no Ruiz, just those damn marks in the mud, leading nowhere. The deputy asked questions, but I was numb, Jess sobbing beside me. It was real, and it had taken them. We left Marble Mount the next day, Jess to Bellingham, me to Missoula. I didn't drive Dusty, couldn't even look at it. The cops kept searching, but I knew they'd find nothing, just like the stories Tom told. That thing wasn't human, wasn't anything I could name. It was part of the river, the fog, the dark, and we'd walked right into it. The tragedy wasn't just Ryan's death or Ruiz's. It was the guilt, the what-ifs, knowing I'd picked that pullout, ignored the signs, let him go back. It was my fault, and no road could outrun that. Jess doesn't draw anymore, says the lines come out wrong. I don't sleep much, always checking locks, jumping at shadows. Sometimes I hear that hum, low and cruel, like it's waiting for me to slip up again. I burned my maps, swore off camping, but it doesn't help. That thing's still out there, in the Cascades or somewhere else, hunting anyone dumb enough to stop where they shouldn't. I see Ryan's grin in my dreams, hear his laugh, and wake up screaming, knowing I led us to it, and it'll never let me forget. The worst part? I keep thinking it followed us, just a little. Jess says she feels it too, a cold spot in her apartment, a hum at night. We don't talk about it, but it's there, tying us to that night, to Ryan, to the horror we can't unsee. I'll never park by a river again, never trust the fog. We ran, we survived, but the real tragedy is living with it, knowing I made the call that killed my friend, and no amount of miles will ever make it right. I don't know what it was, but I know it's not done. It's waiting, patient, for someone else to pull over, to make the same deadly mistake. And every night, when I close my eyes, I see that shape in the fog, feel that hum, and know it's still out there, watching, ready for me to step back into its game. I won't, but that doesn't mean it's over. It never will be. The wind howled through the pines, rattling my van's windows like it wanted in. I'm Maya Ellison, 27 years old, and I live in Eugene, Oregon, though I've been roaming for a year now. My rig, a rusty GMC Vandura I call Sage, is my everything: bed, kitchen, and a wobbly shelf for my books. Tonight, I was parked near Snoqualmie Pass, Washington, on a forested pullout just off the highway. The mountains loomed dark and heavy, and the air smelled of snow, sharp and clean. It was peaceful, sure, but a horror lingered in my gut, like I'd rolled into the wrong scene of a scary movie. I wasn't alone. My friend Leo, a 29-year-old carpenter from Olympia, was slouched in the front seat, scrolling his phone for signal. We'd met at a climbing gym last spring, bonded over bad coffee and worse puns. He was steady, always calm, but tonight his jaw was tight, like he felt something off too. In the back, sprawled on my fold-out bed, was Riley, his 24-year-old neighbor, a barista with a knack for fixing things. She was all sharp wit and restless energy, tagging along for a weekend of hiking and stargazing. They made the van feel alive, but not quite safe. We'd spent the day trekking trails near Snoqualmie Falls, dodging muddy patches and snapping pics of the mist. Now, with the wind kicking up, we were hunkered down for the night. Sage's heater was cranking, barely keeping the cold at bay, and I was stirring a pot of instant curry, the spicy smell filling the air. Leo was teasing Riley about her playlist, too much indie, not enough grit, while she fired back, grinning. It was cozy, the kind of moment you chase on the road, but my eyes kept drifting outside, where the dark felt too close, too hungry. Something wasn't right. The wind was loud, yeah, but the forest had a stillness under it, like it was waiting for something. I'd parked here because it was free, tucked off the road with no camping signs, but now it felt wrong, like I'd trespassed without knowing. I kept checking the windows, half expecting to see a face, a shadow, something disturbing staring back. I told myself it was just the altitude messing with me. I'd camped in weirder spots and been fine, but my gut wasn't convinced. Dinner was ready, and we sat on the floor, passing curry and naan, the van rocking in the gusts. Riley told a story about a creepy regular at her coffee shop, some guy who whispered her name like he knew her. Leo laughed, said she was jumping at shadows, but I saw her flinch, just a little. I didn't add much, too busy watching the dark beyond the glass. Sage felt like a bubble, warm and bright, but outside, the mountains pressed in, and that scary vibe grew, like we'd stopped in a place that didn't want us. After we ate, Leo rigged a tarp outside to block the wind, swearing when it flapped loose. Riley was messing with her vape, the cherry glow lighting her face, while I cleaned up, stacking dishes in my tiny sink. The wind carried a low moan, not just air but something deeper, and I froze, listening. Neither of them noticed, too caught up in their banter, but I felt it, a prickle on my neck, like we weren't alone. I locked the doors, double-checking, and tried to shake it off, blaming the late hour and my tired brain. Leo came back in, smelling like pine and cold, and pulled out a deck of cards. We played rummy, betting granola bars, the laughter loud but forced. Riley kept glancing at the windows, her smile fading fast, and I wondered if she felt it too. That tug of dread, like the night was hiding something. I dimmed the lantern, leaving just enough light to see their faces, and told myself it was nothing. Sage was my home, my shield, but tonight, it felt flimsy, like the wind could rip it apart and show us what was really out there. As we wrapped up, Riley crashed early, curling up with her hoodie as a pillow. Leo was still fiddling with his phone, muttering about no bars, while I climbed into my sleeping bag, the van creaking around me. The wind was relentless, and every gust sounded like a whisper, a call I didn't want to answer. I lay there, eyes on the ceiling, my heart beating too fast. This wasn't just another night on the road. Something was off, a disturbing hum in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling we'd parked somewhere we shouldn't have. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept spinning, picking apart the day, the trails, the falls, this pullout. Leo's snores started, steady and annoying, but they didn't help. Riley shifted, mumbling in her sleep, and I stared at the windows, the dark outside a solid wall. That prickle was sharper now, like a warning I was too dumb to heed. I didn't know what was out there, but it felt close, and the horror of it was sinking in. We were in deep, and the night was just getting started. I woke up freezing, my sleeping bag no match for the cold seeping into Sage. The wind was still howling outside, rattling the van like a tin can. I checked my phone, 4:46 a.m., no signal, big surprise. Leo was slumped in the front seat, his breath fogging, and Riley was buried under blankets in the back, her vape glowing faintly. My head was fuzzy from a dream I couldn't pin down. Something about being chased, maybe, or trapped. That horror from last night was still there, clawing at my nerves, telling me this pullout was bad news. I pulled on my jacket and cracked the side door, the wind hitting me like a slap. The forest was a blur of dark shapes, the highways hummed faint through the trees. I stepped out, my boots sinking into muddy gravel, and checked Sage's tires. Fine, but the ground nearby was torn up, like something heavy had dragged through it. My stomach flipped. Could have been a deer, maybe the wind, but it looked too messy, too fresh. That scary vibe was back, whispering I'd missed something big, and I scanned the dark, seeing nothing but pines. Back inside, I tried the heater. Dead, just a sad whine when I flipped the switch. Perfect. Sage was falling apart when I needed her most, and the cold was biting deeper. I thought about waking Leo, telling him about the marks outside, but what was the point? He'd laugh, call me jumpy, and I wasn't ready to argue. Instead, I checked the battery under the hood, my fingers numb. The cables looked okay, but when I tried the ignition, Sage coughed once and quit. My heart sank. Stranded in this creepy spot wasn't how I saw this trip going. Morning came slow, the sky gray but the wind calmer. Leo was up, stretching, complaining about his neck, while Riley brewed coffee on my stove, her hands shaky. I didn't mention the marks or the engine. Didn't want to freak them out, but I kept glancing outside, that disturbing tug stronger now. Over coffee, we planned a short hike to a ridge Leo knew, maybe catch a view if the clouds broke. But the van was bugging me. I suggested driving to North Bend, get the battery checked, but Riley wanted to hike first, and Leo backed her, saying Sage would hold. I gave in, hating myself for it. We packed light, water, snacks, a flashlight, and locked the van, the key sticking again, like it was warning me. The trail was steep, mud sucking at our boots, the pines looming like they were listening. Leo led, joking about avalanches, but Riley was quiet, her eyes on the ground. I kept checking behind us, those drag marks stuck in my head, how they didn't look natural. The forest felt wrong, too still despite the wind, and my skin prickled, like we were being sized up for something scary. About a mile in, Riley stopped, her head tilted. "What's that?" she asked, voice tight. I froze, listening, nothing but branches creaking, then a faint buzz, like static from a busted radio, gone fast. Leo didn't hear it, shrugged it off, but Riley's face said she wasn't imagining things. I remembered her catching weird vibes at her shop, like she had a sixth sense. We pushed on, but that buzz lingered in my mind, a piece of a puzzle I didn't want to touch. The trail felt tighter, like the trees were closing in. Back at Sage, I tried the engine again, same dead sputter. Leo cursed, finally getting why I was stressed, but he still didn't want to bail yet. Riley was sketching, her lines jittery, catching the pines in sharp angles. I noticed something new. The tarp Leo rigged last night was gone, not blown away, but missing, like someone took it. I didn't say anything, my throat tight, but my eyes scanned the trees, expecting what? A figure? A sign? That horror was rooting deeper, tying the marks, the buzz, the tarp into something I couldn't ignore. We decided to stay another night. Dumb, I know, but Leo wanted to hike again tomorrow, and Riley didn't argue. I should have fought harder, pushed to leave, but I didn't. Instead, I checked the locks twice, my hands clumsy, and cleaned the windshield, noticing a smudge inside, like a finger had grazed it. My blood chilled, it wasn't there yesterday. I wiped it away, acting like it was nothing, but my gut was screaming we'd made a mistake, that something was circling closer. Dinner was quiet, just soup and crackers, the van cold without the heater. Leo tried to lighten the mood, telling a story about a botched job, but Riley barely looked up, her pencil scratching. I couldn't eat much, too busy listening to the wind, waiting for that buzz to come back. The dark outside was solid, pressing against Sage, and I felt trapped, like we'd parked in a trap we couldn't see. I locked the doors again, my fingers shaking, and told myself it was just one more night, but deep down, I knew. Something disturbing was out there, and it was getting bold. Nights settled heavy, the wind a low moan outside Sage's windows. I was hunched over a mug of tea, the steam doing nothing for the cold creeping into my bones. Leo was whittling a stick, shavings dusting the floor, while Riley sketched, her pencil moving fast, almost frantic. That smudge on the windshield was burned into my brain, along with the missing tarp and those drag marks. Little clues piling up, screaming scary in a way I couldn't dodge. The forest felt alive, not in a good way, like it was holding its breath, waiting to spring something horrifying on us. I set my mug down, the clink too loud, and checked the locks again, third time in an hour. Leo raised an eyebrow but didn't comment, his knife pausing mid-cut. Riley's eyes flicked to the window, her face tight, like she'd seen something. I didn't ask, my nerves were already shot, but the air was thick, charged, like a storm about to break. That disturbing buzz Riley mentioned earlier was gone, but its absence was worse, like whatever made it was right outside, listening. I dimmed the lantern, leaving just a glow, and sat back, my heart thudding too fast. Then it came, a sharp thud against the van's roof, heavy, like something dropped from the trees. We froze. Leo's stick hit the floor, Riley's pencil snapped in her grip, and my mug tipped, tea pooling on the table. "What the?" I started, but another thud cut me off, closer to the back. This wasn't wind, wasn't an animal. It felt deliberate, like a warning. My pulse roared, and I grabbed my flashlight, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. The beam hit the ceiling, showing nothing, but the horror was real now, choking the air. I killed the light, plunging us into dark, the lantern's flicker barely enough. Leo hissed, "Maya, what's out there?" But I shushed him, straining to hear. Silence, then a scrape, slow, grinding, along the van's side, like nails on a chalkboard but worse. Riley whimpered, scooting closer to me, her sketchbook forgotten. I wanted to say it was nothing, but my gut knew better. That thing was testing us, and the scary truth was sinking in. We weren't alone, and it wasn't friendly. Leo crawled to the driver's seat, fumbling with the keys. I didn't stop him. Sage was our only shot out, but when he turned the ignition, it sputtered, same as before, and died. He slammed the wheel, cursing, and I felt panic claw my chest. The scraping stopped, but the silence was heavier, like a predator sizing us up. Riley pointed at the side window, her voice a whisper. "There." I looked, and my blood froze. A shadow, tall and jagged, slid past the glass, gone in a blink. Not human, not right, like it was stitched from the dark itself. I grabbed Riley's arm, pulling her to the middle, Leo joining us, his knife out, but shaking. The van rocked, not hard, but enough to make us gasp, like something leaned against it, testing its weight. My mind screamed run, but the forest was a death trap, and Sage wasn't moving. That buzz was back, faint at first, then louder, humming through the walls, vibrating my teeth. It wasn't just sound, it was alive, angry, tying to that shadow, that thud. Whatever it was here, and it was done hiding. Another scrape came, this time on the windshield, slow and taunting. I didn't look, couldn't, but Leo did, his face draining white. "It's marking it," he choked out. I forced myself to peek, and there it was, a fresh smudge, bigger, jagged, like claws had raked the glass from outside. My scream caught in my throat, and I yanked the curtains shut, useless but instinctive. The hum grew, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I knew we'd screwed up, stayed too long, ignored the signs, parked in a place that wasn't ours. We huddled tight, the lantern flickering, throwing shadows that made my skin crawl. No more thuds, no scrapes, just that hum, endless and cruel, like it was inside us now. Leo was muttering, we're fine," but he wasn't convincing anyone. Riley was trembling, her hands clenched, and I wanted to promise we'd make it, but the words wouldn't come. Something was clearly wrong. This wasn't a prank, wasn't nature. It was something older, hungrier, and we were trapped in its game. The van felt smaller, the walls closing in as the hum droned on, relentless. My flashlight was useless, battery drained, and the keys sat mocking us on the dash. Every choice, stay, run, fight, felt like a losing bet. I kept seeing that shadow in my mind, its jagged edges, how it moved like it owned the night. We'd walked into a horror show, and the worst part? It wasn't rushing, wasn't breaking in. It was waiting, savoring our fear, and I knew, deep down, it was only a matter of time before it made its move. The hum was a blade in my brain, carving out every thought but fear. Sage was a cage, that shadow's claw marks fresh on the windshield, and I couldn't sit still anymore. "We're getting out," I whispered, my voice raw. Leo nodded, his knife shaking, and Riley clung to me, her eyes wide. That thing was out there, waiting, and staying meant dying. The horror was suffocating, but I grabbed my dead flashlight, more for comfort than use, and told them to take only water. We were running, and it was now or never. I cracked the side door, my heart pounding like it had burst. The wind was gone, leaving a dead calm, the forest black beyond the van. I stepped out, my boots soft on gravel, and scanned the dark. Nothing, but the air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. Riley followed, her breathing shaky, and Leo was last, clutching his knife like it'd save us. The plan was desperate. Hit the trail back to the highway, maybe a mile, and flagged down a car. Every step was a gamble, but that scary shadow wasn't giving us a choice. We slipped into the trees, the trail a faint path under my phone's weak glow. Branches snagged my hair, and Riley's limp slowed us, her wrist still bad from earlier. Leo kept looking back, muttering, "It's close. I know it." I didn't argue, felt it too, a weight on my neck, like eyes drilling through the dark. The hum was softer but there, trailing us like a hunter. My phone flickered, battery dying, and I cursed, shaking it to stay alive. The forest was a maze, and every snap of a twig made my gut lurch. This was life or death, and we were barely ahead. We pushed on, mud sucking at our boots. Riley tripped, gasping, and I yanked her up, my hands slick with sweat. Leo hissed to hurry, but his voice cracked, fear leaking through. The trail twisted, and I thought I saw the highway's glow, faint but real. Hope flared, but so did panic. That hum was louder now, vibrating my chest. I glanced back, stupidly, and saw it. That shadow, jagged and wrong, weaving through the trees, closer than before. My scream died, and I shoved Riley forward, yelling, "Go!" We ran, blind, branches whipping my face. Riley was sobbing, slowing us down, and Leo grabbed her other arm, half carrying her. My phone died, plunging us into dark, and I fumbled forward, guided by the highway's hum. The shadow was behind us. I didn't see it, but I felt it, cold and heavy, like death breathing down my neck. The hum was deafening, shaking my bones, and I knew we were prey, running from something that didn't tire. The trail opened, and I saw asphalt. Freedom, maybe, but it felt like a trap. We hit the highway, stumbling, my knees scraping pavement. No cars, no lights, just an empty stretch mocking us. I waved my arms anyway, shouting, my voice hoarse. Riley collapsed, clutching her wrist, and Leo was panting, his knife useless. The hum shifted, circling, and I spun, expecting that shadow to launch. Nothing, but it was there, I knew it. My mind screamed we'd made it, but my gut said no. This was a pause, not an escape. That disturbing presence was still with us, patient, cruel. A rumble grew, headlights, a sedan, slowing as it saw us. I ran into the road, flailing, yelling help. The driver, a middle-aged woman, stopped, her face pale but kind. I babbled, "Van broke down, something's after us, please." She nodded, said to get in, and we piled into the back, Riley shaking, Leo gripping my hand. The car sped off, the highway blurring, and I thought maybe we'd cheated death. But the hum didn't stop. It was faint, clinging, like it had tagged along, hiding in the dark. The woman, Karen, said she'd take us to North Bend, call the cops from there. I leaned back, gasping, my body screaming from the run. Riley was crying softly, Leo staring out the window, his knife still out. I wanted to believe we were safe, but that horror stuck to me, like the forest had marked us. The road was empty, the sedan's heat blasting, but I kept glancing back, expecting to see that shadow in the rear view, its jagged edges filling the glass. We were running from great danger, but it felt like we'd only delayed the end. Every mile felt stolen, my pulse still racing. Karen asked what happened, and I mumbled about a breakdown, too scared to say more. Riley's wrist was swollen, her face ghost white, and Leo's silence was louder than words. The hum was in my head now, or maybe outside. I couldn't tell. North Bend was close, its lights a promise, but so was the fear that thing wasn't done, that it'd follow us, wait for us to slip. We'd escaped, but not really, and the night wasn't over yet. North Bend's glow hit us like a lifeline, the diner's neon sign cutting the dark. Karen pulled over, saying she'd get the cops, and I helped Riley out, her wrist limp, her eyes empty. Leo was pacing, his knife pocketed but his hands twitching. We sat inside, the diner's warmth useless against the chill in my bones. The hum was gone, but its shadow lingered, a horror that wouldn't let go. The waitress called the sheriff, and we waited, my mind stuck on that jagged shape, the marks on sage, knowing we'd brushed something we couldn't unsee. I tried to explain to the waitress. Van died, something chased us, but my words felt hollow, like I was lying to myself. Riley sipped water, barely speaking, and Leo kept checking the door, like he expected it to burst open. I wanted to hold them, say we'd be okay, but my gut was screaming. We'd survived, but at a cost. That scary truth was clear. We'd parked in the wrong place, and it wasn't done with us. The diner felt safe, but it was a lie, a pause before the real price came due. Leo was the one who broke. He leaned in, voice low, saying he'd left his tools in Sage, his dad's kit, worth more than money to him. I stared, my stomach dropping. "No way," I said, grabbing his arm. But his eyes were set, stubborn as hell. He said he'd go back, just a quick run, the cops could drive him. Riley begged, her voice cracking. "Don't, Leo, please." I backed her, nearly shouting. But he stood, saying it'd be fine. The thing was gone, right? I knew it wasn't, but he was already moving, asking Karen for a lift to the station. The sheriff arrived, a guy named Holt, taking our story with a frown. Leo cut in, saying he needed to check the van. Could they go now? I screamed, "Leo, stop!" But Holt nodded, saying they'd be careful, back in an hour. Leo gave me a look, half smile, half apology, and climbed into the cruiser. I lunged for the door, but Riley held me back, sobbing, "He's gone, Maya." The taillights vanished, and my chest caved in. That was the mistake, the deadly one, and I knew it had cost us everything. Karen stayed, her face tight, saying she'd heard tales. Hikers lost, shadows in the pass, stuff locals didn't repeat. I didn't want it to fit, but it did, like a key in a lock. Riley was shaking, her wrist wrapped by the waitress, and I sat numb, watching the clock. An hour passed, then two. No Leo, no Holt. Karen called again, her voice sharp, and the waitress whispered about bad nights up here. The hum was back, faint, mocking, or maybe it was my pulse, but it felt like that thing was laughing, knowing it had won. Cops showed up at dawn, faces grim. They'd found Holt's cruiser, engine running, doors open, a mile from Sage. The van was wrecked, glass gone, claw marks deep, blood smeared on the seats. No Leo, no Holt, just tracks in the mud, jagged and wrong, fading into the trees. They asked if we'd seen anyone, anything, but I couldn't speak, just nodded, Riley crying beside me. It was real, that thing, and it had taken them, because Leo went back, because I didn't stop him hard enough. Karen drove us to a motel, Riley doped up on painkillers, me staring at nothing. I kept seeing Leo's smile, his dumb courage, and Holt, just doing his job. Gone, because of us, because I picked that pullout. The cops searched, but I knew they'd find zilch. Nothing explains what we saw. That thing wasn't a man, wasn't a beast. It was something else, tied to the pass, the wind, the dark. The tragedy was bigger than death. It was the guilt, the silence between me and Riley, the knowing I'd led us there and lost him. We left North Bend, Riley to Olympia, me to Eugene. I scrapped Sage, couldn't touch it without seeing those marks. Riley doesn't talk much now, says her sketches come out twisted, like that shadow still in her. I don't sleep, always checking windows, hearing that hum at night, faint but there. It's waiting, I know it, for someone else to park where they shouldn't, to make the same mistake. I see Leo in my dreams, reaching for his tools, and wake up screaming, knowing I failed him, that the horror's still out there, patient, forever. The worst part's the quiet, how it sneaks in, makes you think you're safe. I'll never camp again, never trust the mountains. Riley says she feels it too, a cold spot, a hum when she's alone. We don't say it, but it's true. That thing followed us, just a piece, enough to remind us. The real tragedy is living, carrying Leo's ghost, knowing I chose the spot, ignored the signs, and let him walk into it. No road, no time will ever make that right, and the dark's always waiting for me to slip again.